morning here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora to you. Happy to be here with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and appreciate everyone watching and listening here in Central and Upstate New York, as well as up and down the East Coast, the Midwest, the West Coast, and all around the globe. So wherever you are this morning, good morning, and welcome to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We have an awesome show set up here for you today on Wake Up Call. I'll be starting off the broadcast inside of MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin' with my very special guest, Brian Bruno, defensive coordinator for the CBA Brothers football team here in Syracuse, New York, coming off of a 2023 New York State title. Brian will be joining me picture-in-picture momentarily, and then in hour number 2, we're going to jump into the college football playoff. No matter who won last night, it was going to be a new national champion. There has never been a Michigan or Washington team that has won the college football playoff until now. That going to Michigan in a convincing victory over Washington, and we'll be discussing that starting around 10 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, and then we'll have a special Ingredients to Success, proudly presented by Avicolli's on 7839 Oswego Road in Liverpool, that is connected to the college football playoff. So plenty of great stuff coming up here on the broadcast this morning, and we're ready to bring in Brian here picture-in-picture. Mr. Bruno, how we doing?
Very well, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, and you know, looking at this run that the team had this specific season, you know, it's been an incredible run, an incredible time, and I'm sure there's a lot of memories that are along the way here. What sticks out to you the most? Beyond, I know the easy choice would be saying the state title game, but beyond that, do you have a moment or two that really just sits with you this season that is top of mind when you think about the success of this year?
Yeah, I guess I really don't have one or two moments for the season. You know, one of the interesting things that happens when you have a great team like this is the brotherhood that gets created in the special team. In just looking back at this team specifically, it started a long time ago. You know, most of these kids, we started coaching between the 7th and 8th grade. Some came in as a freshman. And just the memories that they all had together with us, you know, they truly became football sons to me. And I guess as I look back, just the journey itself was great from the time they started at CBA to now. It's just a great way for them to end.
When you see them grow through the process and you see them learn and evolve and whatnot, what are some of those things that you try to instill, no matter who it is, no matter what year it is? What are some of those pieces that are kind of the Brian Bruno way, that stamp that you try to leave with everybody?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of parallels, especially with sports to business and some other careers. And as I look back, you know, some of the best things that were instilled upon me when I was a player at CBA were the ability to work with others. And, you know, CBA specifically brings in so many different, you know, people from different backgrounds and cultures that it kind of forces you to start, you know, learning how to work with people that maybe are a little different than you. And it takes time to develop that. And if you don't, you know, focus on it and make it a, you know, part of everyday life in your team, they can create a problem. But the opposite of that is when you do learn to work with someone that has differences for you or comes from different backgrounds, special things get created. So that's one. Secondly, just discipline in itself. You know, not having ever a day where it's okay to, you know, be rude to a player, or be rude to a coach. To not dress in the right uniform. You know, those are things I think are lost in some of today's culture. And when you do all those little things, the byproduct ends up being winning. And it really is kind of second to everything else.
When you look at those things that matter to you, those teachable moments and those things that you take away, like you said, you know, never having one of those days where you disrespect a player or a player feels, you know, that they can disrespect a coach. You and I, off the air, spoke about the fact that I wanted to bring up Paul Cicerelli and what your experience was like with him and how that experience and that connection relationship with him has maybe instilled some things in you as a coach that you use to today. And I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into your relationship with Paul Cicerelli and how that relationship still pays off today, dividends to how you coach.
Sure. I you know, it's funny you asked that. I think as you get older, you start appreciating, some of the people that helped you along the way. And, when Coach Cicerelli was my coach, I don't know if I fully appreciated, some of the things that he helped me learn at the time, but looking back, I can clearly see them now. He was definitely an eccentric coach. He wasn't your typical X's and O coach. He focused on all the little things, wearing a tie the right way, bringing a sports coat, looking the part, shaking hands the right way, learning how to lose the right way, all those things that you want as a young player. And as I've had the opportunity to, help develop young men, those little things that Coach Cicerelli helped me learn, I'm trying to do the same.
You talk about the shaking hands, and everybody brings that up. Casey brought it up. Casey Brown, the head coach, offensive coordinator. Bruce Williams brought it up. USDC. You've brought it up at CBA. The student athletes have brought it up. I'd love to just go into that specifically, because that is something that to this day at 38 years old, when I shake somebody's hand, I'm very purposeful in reaching out, shaking hands, looking them in the eye. So I'd love to talk about the art of that, because you spoke about Paul Cicerelli, but I know that you as a staff carry it on too, and your student athletes discuss it openly, that you taught them how to do that. The staff teaches them how to shake hands, how to enter a room, that the first impression you're only going to have one time. Just why you focus and put so much emphasis on that as a staff.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the job that we have isn't to win football games. That's all nice, but really our job is to help create opportunities for these young men. And we do get a lot of college coaches coming into our building, and oftentimes, our student athletes are put in front of them, and they don't necessarily have those skills right away. Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things that you kind of learn as you start coaching and really focusing on those moments, sometimes it comes very natural to a young man to shake hands and look at somebody and learn how to talk to them. Yeah. But not to get too deep into it, but this day and age, a lot of kids don't have those personal skills to talk to people anymore. They're so busy using their phones and using other mediums. They've forgotten how to just interact with people. So we actually, as a staff, take the time to go through a recruiting class with our students and teach them, for the moment a coach comes in, how to shake a hand the right way, how to look them in the eye, how to make a memorable moment for themselves, so they can help create an opportunity potentially to go to that college. And those little things are really the building blocks that lead into the bigger things we talked about. But just the firmness of a handshake and how you make that first impression is really important.
Yeah, and you said it. So many college coaches come through Christian Brothers Academy. I believe this past season you had over 40 schools come in and interact with your student athletes in some way, shape, or form. Why do you feel like there's been an uptick? Why has there been this growth of, coaches coming in? Because I know that recruiting the state of New York, Central and Upstate New York, it's a very important piece to my life. It's incredibly important to me. I don't care what sport it is, if it's swimming and diving, football, crew, track, basketball, baseball, softball, field hockey, whatever it is. I want student athletes here in our community to get their looks and get their opportunities. And Christian Brothers Academy has done a fantastic job of that. And it seems like it continues to build. Why do you feel like there is such a spotlight on CBA right now, even before this state title? Then I know there's been a couple in recent history here, but is that why we saw more than 40? Because there was a state title around the COVID times? Or is it something else that you feel like you're doing as a staff? Why is there such a connection with schools around the country and CBA right now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons, and if I kind of break it down and bifurcate all of them, first and foremost, it's the school itself. I mean, we're creating young men and women that are ready for college. It's a college prep school. They take college level classes, and because of that, there is a huge leap from some of the schools around the country when they first get into these colleges. And for a recruitable athlete, there's a lot of pressure on college coaches to win. And when they bring someone in and they've invested a lot of time and money in them, they really can't afford for them to be ineligible on the sidelines. So our track record as a school is really strong with our student athletes coming in from day one and excelling at the college level. and truly because of, the work they do at our high school. We spend a lot of time talking about eligibility. We go through the eligibility requirements before they even leave school. But just as a school itself, we passing is 70 versus the typical school is 65. And there's some ineligibility requirements at CBA that are much different than public school. The second facet of that, honestly, is New York itself is under recruited, and we are trying to do our job to educate the coaches that come in.
Yeah.
There was a 10-year study done recently through the NFL, and the most recruited states oftentimes don't have the likelihood of an athlete reaching the field within the second year. So when I last looked, Florida, California, and Texas actually have the least likely probability that a student athlete will hit the field in year two, largely because it is over recruited. And then New York, because of its large population, actually has the number one highest probability of a student athlete reaching the field in year two. And that's a message I think college coaches are starting to kind of open up to. There's been a long history of kids being successful. And I think when, you asked when this started, I think when we started seeing some of our athletes like Danny D'Amico and Vasi Dennis and Stevie Scott leave our school and go and excel at that next level, coaches started looking and saying, hey, we don't want to miss the next one.
Yeah, and I feel like you said, being at Christian Brothers Academy, I'm an alum, and I know that not everybody, when you talk about the regents in New York State, do you still have the regents, by the way?
We do.
So difficult. But when you look at, I remember in physics, I was taking physics. I had to take physics I think I took it for 2 years. And they told us the last year, if you pass our teacher's test, like if you pass his final, you don't have to take the regents. I don't know how I passed this test. I mean, I studied. I'm a good student, but physics is hard. And so I'm going to tell you what I did. And this is the truth. This is God's honest truth. I'm not a person who lies, so hand to God. I was nervous to take the test. I didn't want to have to take the regents. And I sat down. I think I was sitting in the middle of the room, middle of the row. And I'm sitting there. And I'm nervous. I'm like shaky. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm sick to my stomach. And I'm doing this test. And right when I started to do it to calm myself down, my brain started playing the movie Liar Liar. And
that's great.
And I saw the entire movie because it's a movie that I know front to back. So I literally played the entire movie in my head all the way to the rolling credits of the movie and was trying to finish while the credits were rolling because it had calmed me down so much. Played the whole movie in my head, took the test, still couldn't tell you one question on that test. I got a 98 in the class.
My gosh.
and that was it. So it was almost like God, like, hey, I'm going to bring your nerves down. I'm going to make you laugh. I'm going to give you something fun, and you just handle what you need to handle. But the regents, I did have to take some other ones. I had to take one in math. Those, I know down south they don't have to take it, and in a bunch of places they don't have to worry about that. But it plays to the state of New York, number one, but it also plays to Christian Brothers Academy. When you say, 65 is passing in some places, but it's 70 at CBA, there was this different type of education. And my teachers told me this, but it really was true. And I want to say it out loud because I hope that some of my teachers will see this, is that they prepared us so well for college that there was never a time in college where I felt like I hadn't already been pushed in high school in a collegiate type of way. I felt like what was asked of me at CBA, it was like I had gone to college for years, and now I was just going to another college. And I think that that's something that really needs to be put out there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And to carry that on to the athletic field, one of the other things that I think our football recruiting community is starting to understand is what a good job our staff is doing in educating our kids on actual schematics of plays. We're not just running through plays; we're teaching them the purpose of them and how it works in an overall system. So we see, I guess, a lower learning curve for them once they get to college. They can pick it up pretty quickly because of the systems that we've installed, here at high school.
Yeah, and you speak about that, breaking down plays and making sure they understand it, not just because that was one of the things, one of the knocks that people tried to make on New York is they said, well, they don't run plays like other states do. They do things very simplistic, and there was kind of like this blanket statement that the state of New York, when it comes to football, doesn't go in depth into intricate pieces. They make things very vanilla, and that's not true. So I'd love to for you to expound on that a little bit on why Christian Brothers Academy specifically isn't about this kind of base level playing, but that you go deeper into pieces that they're going to have to learn, which helps to prepare them for college.
Yeah, I mean, I look, part of this started really with Coach Casamento. He was the first to bring the spread offense to the region, if you will. And with that, I think a lot of other coaches started recognizing how fast our game was changing, nationally. Yeah. And you have a lot of single wing, double wing, wing T type teams, just from years of running it from the Pop Warner level all the way up. That have continued, and then you have other teams that have said, "Hey, if we want a college coach to come in here and say, how's this young man going to fit into our system?" It's a lot easier for them to see how that might work if they see it in the high school level, right? So, it's tough to take a kid that is playing in the double wing and say he's going to be a good receiver for us at the college level. So we spent a ton of time networking with other coaches. I could just speak for our staff. We travel. We spend time talking to other states and high school coaches as well as a lot of college coaches. And then just in general, we don't really take the attitude, I guess, that, that we have what we know and we don't want to share it. I mean, we're happy and oftentimes talk to a lot of other schools within New York and pick brains and share ideas, because the overall goal is to make the state and all the football better. It's only going to help our kids in the long run. So.
As a defensive coordinator, why be on the defensive side? What attracted you to that? How did it all come about that you have worked in your career as the leader of the defensive unit?
It's a good question. I've always enjoyed defense more than offense, just as a kid up until now. I tease Coach Williams, Bruce Williams, who's our offensive coordinator, often. The offense gets to draw a play up on a piece of paper, and then just kind of show up and execute it. And I know it's much more difficult than that, but that's how we look at it. And I think the interesting thing with defense is there's a lot more studying involved with the weakness of the other team, what opportunities exist, recognizing the threat that they may pose and how you can eliminate that threat and mitigate that threat. So I love the strategy involved with defense. And just the front to back process of how do you look at a team and basically stop them. I find a lot of fun, honestly. So we spent a ton of time on film. I would challenge any school that and any staff that spends more time than us on the defensive side of the ball, just breaking down opponents.
Here with Brian Bruno, a CBA Syracuse defensive coordinator, following their 2023 New York State title here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Looking at, like you said, breaking things down and the schematics of everything and that passion that you've always had on the defensive side, to ask you to be very critical of yourself, where did Brian Bruno need to grow at the beginning of the season? And where is Brian Bruno now? If you're constantly challenging your student athletes, then obviously, in all fairness, constantly challenging yourself. Where have you gone from the beginning of this season to where we stand right now?
Yeah, so one of the things I learned, I guess, after my last season was that, students in themselves learn differently from student to student. So, oftentimes we like to get on the field and just run through a play, and that's great for half of your kids. Yeah. They pick up on it better. But the reality is there are other students that learn better with video. There's some students that learn better with a whiteboard. So integrating all three kind of phases of teaching to our students, I think, has really helped us this year. In terms of, our focus going forward is, one of the interesting things with high school, similar to college, is you may only have one or two seasons with some of these student athletes. and trying to get them in early to start teaching them the game and how we do things and the whys of how we do things helps them understand the overall scheme that you're running. So you can take a player that's on a small roster like CBA has and move them around. One of the benefits that we have is a lot of times if you're on the varsity, you're going to get in because we do normally have a smaller roster size and the teams we're playing. But also because of that, you have to learn multiple positions. So I think that teaching piece of it is the most critical and where we need to spend more time going forward as well.
Yeah, and like you said, that teaching side of it, the teaching element, the things that don't just come with going out there and scoring touchdowns and having fun. So many people see that very small picture, right? They see the game, they see the touchdown, they see the interception, they see the sack, they see the big play moments, but they don't see everything that goes into that. All of the times in practice where that player missed the opportunity to get the sack, all the times where they didn't jump on the ball quick enough and missed the interception, or the wide receiver that didn't run the right route, or the quarterback that didn't hit him at the right time. How many times they had to go through that and get things right and have that repetition and those connections and relationships where that they can trust each other to do that. How much do you appreciate the road to get to those moments? Because these very quick moments in games come from a heck of a lot of time in practice, in the film room, and so on and so forth. So what do those mean to you, that journey of watching a player evolve so that they can have that moment in the game?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what you just described is the essence of what we're trying to do. There's an adversity that you have to overcome in the challenge inside of yourself to get better every day as a football player. Yeah. And it doesn't mean if you're the best player, it's no different than if you're, maybe one of the weaker players on a team. The job is to get better and learn that skill so you can carry it throughout your life. So we kind of coined a phrase that we picked up from Coach Laddiser up at De La Salle, who I think is maybe the most remarkable coach for any sport ever, with his streak of, I think it was 151 games. But we coined the phrase perfect effort. So every game we go through the film and we look for, guys that got on the field and just gave perfect effort. And that's the one thing we ask of our students and our athletes every single time is do the one thing you can control, which is, give your best. So when we see them on the field actually try to run what we want them to run or use the skill we want them to run, and they do it the best they can, then, we like to recognize those moments. And that's really what it's about.
Brian Bruno here with us, CBA Syracuse defensive coordinator. Brian, we're going to do something called rapid fire in just a little bit, where you and I get to ask each other questions that could have something to do with football, nothing to do with football. It's just rapid fire, getting to know each other a little bit better and letting the world get to know the defensive coordinator of CBA a little bit better behind the scenes of who you are. But before we get there, Brian, being at CBA with Casey Brown, Bruce Williams, what is that dynamic like with Casey as the head coach, Bruce as the OC? How do you all kind of interact? How have you found ways to kind of be puzzle pieces that fit each other? What can you say to that?
Yeah, so, I think you find, most teams that are successful, there's some level of brotherhood, and it's not always just on the athlete side. For me, I wouldn't ever coach at another school. There's something special for me, being back at my alma mater. But just as important to me is the staff that we have. Casey, Bruce, and the rest of the guys as well. But Casey and Bruce are brothers to me. They've become my best friends. When I need help, they're the first two I call now. We spend a lot of time together, but we also have a very special relationship. And I think what's really neat about the three of us is we all kind of complement each other in different ways. We have different backgrounds. We come from different places. We're at different points in our life, in many instances. But I think that special friendship and brotherhood we have exudes itself to our players. They realize that we're tight and what it looks like to have a friend. Yeah. And we can challenge each other at times, and we do it respectfully. And I think, all those things are good role model moments for our athletes. But, I love Casey and Bruce. I wouldn't ever want to coach anyone different. And, nothing against them if they ever want to move on and do something more with them, because they're great coaches and they'll probably have opportunities to go coach college or maybe at a bigger school someday. But they're definitely my brothers.
You said you never want to be anywhere else. It's your alma mater. This is family. Why is that so deep? Because some people, right, they go to a school and they don't have that same connection. They don't have that same feel. Or, you go and you coach somewhere and you say, okay, you know what? We've won titles here. We've been successful. We've been, like Casey said, we're not at the top of the mountain. We are the mountain. So what is it that goes even deeper for you when it comes to Christian Brothers Academy that you say, I would never want to coach anywhere else. If somebody wants to go, that's fine, but I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought through it that way, but I didn't get into coaching to coach. I didn't wake up one day and say I really want to be a football coach. I run a few different businesses, and I'm really busy. But as I've gotten older, I've started to appreciate the opportunities that have been given to me, and trying to give them back to other people. And I go back to my time at CBA. I had gone to CBA from Canastota, New York, and Canastota is a small farm town. Okay. And I thought I understood the world when I was in Canastota, and then I got to CBA and realized, how diverse and how different the world is just in Central New York. So as I've come back and been a part of CBA, I really am passionate about trying to teach and help as many kids as I can. In the summertime, I actually employ, I think, about 14 of our athletes. I love spending time with them and showing them about, my business and all the different things they can get involved in as they get older. And as I see them graduate and go on to college, it fulfills something inside of me that's, really, really important. And it's become, really my passion. Every day I wake up, I really enjoy spending time with what I call my football sons.
Well, the thing is, and I think, you and I can both attest to this in our own unique way, is as a broadcaster, as a coach, in your case, we get to stay connected to everything that's coming, right? To all of the future of this planet, to the future of humanity. We get to stay connected, and we get to teach, and we get to learn from them. They learn from us. But we get to be a part of it. We're not out of touch ever, because we're always connected to, obviously, the people we grew up with, the people that are older than us that influenced us. And then we also get to be influenced and to be guided and to guide and influence those that are younger than us. So being a coach, being a broadcaster, being in this world of sports, we're really with everyone, because we talk to the people that have been through it, we talk to the people that are going through it, and then we talk to the people that are going to go through it. And I think that that's a really special way that as much as you and I go about our day to day and maybe never think about this, there's something to be said about the fact that by being a coach, being a broadcaster, we get to see just generation after generation, and we get to be connected to everybody, as opposed to not really being in touch with what's coming or what has been.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just always struck by the depth of the impact that we make with some of these kids. And oftentimes you don't realize it in the moment. It might be the smallest thing, by, give them a protein bar or something for the day. And years later they come back and let what an impact you gave them. And, like I said, there's really no better feeling than knowing you helped another person, and giving, does that for you. That's really important, I think.
I could not agree more, and I appreciate that very much, the work that you've done and the whole staff. I wanted to bring this up since I like to drink water on the show. It's important to hydrate, especially as a broadcaster. But these are my guys. Mr. Bruno, okay. Do you have a favorite team?
I used to have a favorite team, and now I've become friends with some NFL coaches over the years, and as tough as it is, sometimes I found myself rooting for teams that I grew up hating, but because of that, I tend to follow where they are now, and not necessarily one single team. And then we've been fortunate to have a few student athletes come through CBA playing on NFL teams, and I also like to follow them. So.
Yeah.
I don't have one team anymore.
Well, my Jaguars very much upset me this season,
Yeah.
but that's okay. I do what I do love, and you brought up Vasi a little while ago, Servasi Dennis, who was a quarterback, shifted to linebacker, ended up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as an undrafted rookie this season, and not surprised at all. I mean, well before the draft, I told people Servasi Dennis is going to make the NFL. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care where he gets drafted. If he doesn't get drafted, he's a guy that's going to make the NFL. Because if you know certain people, you know that they can. And Vasi has barely scratched the surface of who he's going to become as a person, let alone a football player. So I'm not surprised with that. I'm not surprised with Stevie Scott, finding his way and getting to play with, some of these leagues that have come up here, the XFL and the USFL going to become the UFL, but he's been able to play in that professional world as well. And there's something special about some of these kids that have come through Christian Brothers Academy, and you can just tell and you can see it. And getting the education that I got when I interact with Servasi Dennis, who I've gotten to interact with more than a bunch recently, it's maybe hard to describe to other people, but when you go through the same education at CBA, you can see it in other people. You can see the fruits of the labor, of the effort that you put in as a student at Christian Brothers Academy, and I can see it in Vasi. I can see it in how he carries himself. I can see it in how he dresses. I can see it in how he acts. All these things that we've been talking about, they're visible with him. And it makes you proud when you get to see something like that. And I've had the opportunity, because he played for Pitt and my coverage of the ACC, to be able to cross paths with him and interact with him so much. And at ACC Media Day, ACC Kickoff a few years ago in Charlotte, he was there. And I told Casey right before, because they got up on stage and they sit in these like director chairs, and I always sit in the front row. Been that way at CBA, still that way as a broadcaster. I sit right in the front, and I'm in the front row. Vasi is there, and right before they turned the cameras on, he saw me and he smiled and he goes, "Ah," like that. And so, but afterwards we got to shake hands, and we're both wearing suits, standing there in the lobby, and took a picture and connected it back to Christian Brothers Academy. And I just feel like moments like that are really special, to see the man that he is becoming, and to know that him and I like always have that connection. I didn't play football with him. I didn't go to school at the same time he did, but there's that connection at Christian Brothers Academy that I think is unique. And it really was a sense of pride when I got to see him out there representing an entire school at Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I've had several moments that you just described happen to me, and just to touch on Vasi really quick. When he got drafted this year, I remember screaming out loud, "Hey, I'm going to be a Buccaneers fan this year," and I was so proud of him. But when he came back before before the draft, he came back to CBA and showed up to work out with us. I got a real kick out of it, and I was in terms of proud moments, he shows up in all CBA gear. He could have chosen to wear his Pittsburgh gear and do all those things that he deserves to do. But he came in with his old CBA sweatshirt on that looked like a size small on him. But he got right in there and he started teaching our 7th and 8th graders how to lift. And it was just one of those moments. We looked as coaches and he's going to be all right. He's just one heck of a kid. And, obviously has developed into a great young man. But I'm really proud of him, and I know our school's proud of him. Earlier this year I had Sire over at my house. Sire and I spend a lot of time together, and we're often talking about different things. And I was having an issue with my youngest son playing Pop Warner, and he was really nervous because it was the first day of hitting.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, Sire, why don't you go talk to him?" So I kind of walked by, and I heard Sire basically telling him all the things we've told him over the years. Just give your perfect effort and go 1-0 on this down and those things. And just kind of like you're just talking, it was like a proud moment. You could see them developing into leaders and just great men. And he absolutely helped my son that day, which was pretty cool too.
And I want to correct myself. Fifth round pick, 153rd overall for Servassier Dennis. I said undrafted, so let me correct myself on that. But when it comes to you being a defensive coordinator and being able to work with Syer as a DB and to see what Vasi has become, you have this talent that comes through, and you have guys that could play multiple positions. I want to go to Syer for a second here because I asked him about it at Boston College, and we're going to be airing our special this week from on campus at CBA. But I asked him, "What are you going to be there?" And he went, "Yeah, let's just, say it's going to be interesting." He wouldn't give it away because we know he could be a wide receiver. We know he could be a defensive back. He could do different things. How would you describe who he is as an athlete and what Boston College is getting?
Well, first of all, I'm thrilled he's going to my alma mater, Boston College. I know he had a lot of great choices in front of him, but for me, he's getting the most of a scholarship with the education that BC gives, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him at my old school. But just in terms of the opportunity that he presents on defense, I think his versatility is very unique. When we talked to Coach Halfley from Boston College when he came in, Coach has coached some of the best defensive backs ever to play the game. He had Darrell Revis, Joe Hayden, Richard Sherman, Dante Whitmer. He's had some really good players over the years. And one of the things that struck him with Cy that I definitely saw in my own eyes was just the explosion he has near the ball is very unique. He's a athlete that can play down by the line of scrimmage. He can blitz. He can play cover two. He can drop, play man, D end. I mean, there's just so many versatilities to that young man. And I definitely see, the upside of him as maybe a Deebo Samuel type athlete on the offensive side. But in terms of defense, I think he's a playmaker. So we often talk about the difference between, athletes that make plays and playmakers. Playmakers don't just intercept the ball; they take it to the house, and that's what's up.
Where do you see him? When he said "stay tuned," so to speak, if you were at Boston College, how would you use him?
I think they're going to use him just like we did. So we played him at what we call our nickel, which is basically a hybrid outside linebacker safety. We liked him there because of the versatility he gave our defense, and I think Boston College is going to find the same. I think they'll play him down in the box as an extra linebacker, as a blitzer. They'll drop him in coverage. They'll play him in the flat as a cover two corner. He's that guy that has a nose for the ball and can really hit, and he's a sure tackler. They're going to move him around and find unique ways to, make the offense account for him. So there's a big difference when you line up and you look out at the defense and you say, okay, we'll run this play and this is where we're going to go. When you find a unique playmaker on defense, you start lining up and saying, where is that guy? And let's not go that way. So I think BC is going to move him around a lot in both the first and second level, not just the third level. I think you'll see him right down the line of scrimmage.
Brian Bruno here with us, CBA Syracuse defensive coordinator on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora following the 2023 New York State title. Jeff Halfley, the coach now, Steve Adazio, the coach before, both connected to Central and Upstate New York when it comes to recruiting. What is it about Boston College? Like you said, it's your alma mater, but Steve, I know that Steve has always stayed connected for over 3 decades now since he coached on the sidelines at Syracuse, and now seeing Halfley come in, and I'm going to hit you with this because this is how I saw it from the outside looking in. Boston College was already looking at some people, but they came into Syracuse the week that they were playing Syracuse in the Dome. They came into Syracuse that weekend, offered some of the guys at CBA, and then went and beat them in the Dome. And I said at the end of that game, Boston College didn't beat Syracuse once, they beat them twice. Because they came into their backyard, offered these kids that weren't being offered by Syracuse, respected them, said, we want you to come play for us. And then they went into the Dome and said, okay, this is who we are. You can come to the game down the road from CBA. We just offer you, now you can watch what we do. What is it about Boston College? Because Adazio, anywhere he goes, I know he was going to recruit the area. But now that Halfley and his staff is there, why does there continue to be this bridge to Boston College, and what does it mean, especially to you being somebody that's gone there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Syracuse conversation necessarily, but I think in general, when Syracuse doesn't necessarily offer the kids locally, they sometimes get overlooked by some of these schools. We've been fortunate enough to have a really good, long-standing relationship with the staff at BC, and over the years, I can think of at least 4 players we've sent there. For one, I know that the education at BC is a really it's a priority for Boston College in itself, the admissions process.
Yeah.
They really worry about getting kids in that can handle the rigors of the BC education. We're talking about Syer. A lot of things people don't know about Syer, but he made high honor roll last semester, and he's an exceptional student, puts a lot of hard work in. But I know when BC comes, they know they're going to get an athlete that can handle those academic standards at Boston College. But I think secondly, BC, and I talked to Coach Hafley about this when he came, but they're starting to recognize that there's a lot of playmakers that are coming out of New York.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes, as we said, when Syracuse wasn't offering, they just assumed nobody was here. It's not an area that you could spend a whole recruiting day and hit 50 high schools. So you have to kind of know who to talk to in the area and find out, what kind of athletes are available. But those relationships help bring them back. And we're fortunate enough to have a really good one with BC. And, we're hoping that guys like Syer go and continue to do well, just like, other guys that we've sent there before have, and they'll keep coming back.
Yeah, and it's been incredible. But like you said, the issue, and hopefully that'll change now with Fran Brown and the crew here in Syracuse, but the lack of recruiting locally in central and upstate New York did have this effect on other schools that had said to me, I had coaches tell me on the recruiting trail, is there something wrong with this guy? Is there something I'm missing? And I said, why? And he said, well, the school down the street's not recruiting him, so there's got to be
Right.
something wrong with him. And I took a step back on the phone, and then I went into the speaker and I said, that's the issue that frustrates me, and that's how these kids get hit twice, is that in this recent past, the kids in central and upstate New York weren't being respected by the staff that was there to recruit them. And then the people that wanted to recruit them, Syracuse was almost hitting them twice, because it's like, well, we don't want you, but since we don't want you, now you look undesirable to everybody else. So I want to, before we get into rapid fire, why central and upstate New York? What do you want to take away when it comes to this belief and this notion? Because I fight it all the time. I've had people fight me for hours, and I said, you realize that you're fighting with me because I'm going to support kids in our community. You're arguing with me the fact that on 100 spots we can't get 3 kids to Syracuse. That me loving the community, loving these kids, and respecting what they do in the classroom and on the field is somehow offensive. And because, there's people that have the mentality of 4 stars, 5 stars, Texas, Florida, nobody else. And I said, well, everybody's recruiting Florida. Everybody's recruiting Texas. But when it comes to Syracuse, when it comes to upstate New York, when it comes to the state of New York in general, there's a lot of extremely talented people that have come out of here. And Syracuse football's best teams came with guys that were from the backyard, from New York City, from JD, from around the corner. And I find it interesting that people so vehemently hold on to that argument, even those that live in New York, that there's nobody here. So, as a coach, you and I know that this isn't true, Brian. So what do you want to say to the coaches out there, to, the community out there that still has the notion of, well, I was told this, so I believe this, because it's not true. There's been incredible student athletes of all different sports that have come through Central and Upstate New York, many of them coming through CBA. And I just feel like we need to keep banging this drum, and I'll keep doing it until people listen. But it's just something that I don't think is fair. It's a rumor created, but it's a rumor that has hurt some kids, which I am never going to be for.
Yeah, I mean, I there's a lot of answers to what you just said. I mean, first and foremost, just as someone that's in business, and I think strategically all the time. I would never let someone come into my backyard and my business and take an account for me. I think that's the worst thing you could ever happen. And if you think sports are like business, and I happen to think so,
Yeah.
I subscribe more to what Jim Boeheim did. I mean, he wasn't going to let Lazara Sims and Devon Coleman and Routins and all these guys leave and go somewhere else and be successful, even if it was a little bit of a risk. The bigger risk is someone coming into your backyard for an athlete that you want. And I think, over time, unfortunately for potentially Syracuse, so I'll just speak to Syracuse, but there's other schools in the region that are letting a lot of guys go too. But specific to Syracuse, once you start letting guys get out of this area, then the people that look up to those kids and see them successful at Michigan and all these other schools, they start thinking, I want to be like them. I don't want to go to my hometown team. And I think over, a period of, let's say 10 years, you start seeing that, separation of that's my hometown team and really going to support Syracuse. So I think generally the school and the university and hopefully the football staff recognize the community engagement opportunities they have by showcasing, a local talent. And I'm thrilled that JJ Starling's there. I think that's great for the school. But in the meantime, there's been too many Latavius Murrays and Mike Harts and Gronkowski's. I mean, you go on and on that have left this area and gone on to, big careers. I think the top rushing leader and receiving leader ever in Michigan history, who just won the national title, are both from Syracuse, Marquise Walker and Mike Hart. I have to fact check that, but it just speaks to how much talent's been here over the years. Now, are there as many athletes coming out of New York as let's say at Florida? No. But that study I quoted earlier is a fact. You have a higher likelihood of someone reaching the field in year two out of the state of New York than some other areas. And then the last thing I'd add to this is the transfer portal is changing college football without question. Mm-hmm. And I think when you take a kid out of Florida or Texas and make them successful locally, you have a higher risk of them leaving to go back towards their hometowns and playing in the SEC or Big 12 than you do someone locally. And I think that risk is something that's really important because when you can develop juniors and seniors to compete at the college level, you're going to be far more successful than trying to compete with freshmen. So I would hope that, the current coaching staff, and I'm going to throw Colgate and Cornell in that group. And Buffalo's done a good job over the years recruiting locally. But when you recruit local kids, they tend to stay 4 or 5 years and really can contribute to the long-term success of the program.
Yeah. And I mean, you put it perfectly. The transfer portal, you're more apt to, you don't really feel connected to that school. Maybe you're coming because of NIL. Maybe you're coming because you can play right away. Maybe you're coming because you could get in this school, but you can't get into that school. And then the moment that you can go where you wanted to go, then, they'll fade back. So there's also something to be said, too, about, and I've said this before, if you have a 4-8 Syracuse team with local people, and you have a 4-8 Syracuse team with nobody that's local, the difference is in the fans. The moms, the dads, the aunts, the uncles, the brothers, the sisters aren't going to walk out of the dome if they're losing because that's their family. The teachers, the administrators, the coaches are not going to walk out of the dome because those are their kids. So, I think that, and I do want to dispel the other side of this is I'm not saying, hey, Syracuse take a bunch of kids that haven't shown that they can play at that level and haven't given you, don't just take them all because I said they're right here. Take the ones that can and allow them to excel and take a chance. I mean, for goodness sakes, Mackie McPherson was told for how long that he wasn't big enough. And he had 3,000-yard backs in 4 seasons. And then he had his opportunity in the NFL. And he told me, he said, listen, I had my time kind of working things out in the NFL, had a few opportunities. And he said, I chose it wasn't for me. But it wasn't that he didn't have the opportunities to go out there. So Riley Dixon's still doing what he's doing. And to be a punter in the NFL is almost dang near impossible because if you're a good kicker, a good punter, a good long snapper, you might be on the same team for 12 years, 15 years. So for him to be as successful as coveted as he is, speaks a lot to what he's done and the caliber that he had pushed himself to become to be successful in the NFL and to have longevity in the NFL and to know that he came from Central New York. So, with that being said, as we continue to push that spotlight to Central and upstate New York where it should be, and obviously a congratulations to Christian Brothers Academy for not only winning the 2023 New York State title, but also being ranked number one in the state, tied for number one ranking at the end of this season as they step forward. Let's jump into rapid fire. Brian, you and I can ask each other literally anything. There is no preparation, which makes it real. That's why I like doing this. So you get to ask me the first question.
First question. Okay. What sports did you play when you were growing up?
I played Little League Baseball, I played pickup football, and I played organized basketball all through high school, but I played outside of CBA. So I played from 7 years old all the way through, and then I got recruited D3 to the school that I went to and chose not to try out at Marywood University my first year because I was coming off of a coach that, in the nicest way possible, didn't have the morals and values that I had. So I told the other coach, I was like, yeah, I appreciate the phone call, but I wasn't in that headspace. And he was like, well, why don't you work out with us? You can try out next year, but like, just come out and see us, like get a feel for us. And as God would have it, I got a phone call in November, beginning of November, to broadcast a game. And that started my career over 20 years ago. So I never ended up playing basketball because I ended up creating the show that covered men's and women's basketball. So I was at the games on the sideline. So I did think about senior year, though, changing and just working out and being like, listen, it's my senior year. I love the sport. I want to play. I believe I can do it. But I didn't want to leave the broadcast side of things. So basketball my whole life for the most part. Football and pickup games for two reasons. One, my mom said if I played football, she'd break every bone in my body. And the other reason was as much as, because when I was at CBA, Brandon McInerney, who was a D lineman on the team, he said to me, he's like, I'm watching you. And he's like, I'm seeing you in gym class and some of the things they have us doing. He's like, you're scrappy. He's like, you can get in and out of things. He's like, you'd be a good running back for us. And then he goes, let me speak to Coach Kaz. And to this day, I'll never forget this. He said, I talked to Coach Kaz, and he wants to see you put on 100 pounds. And I told him, no, thank you. And I said, you could tell Coach Kaz, no, thank you. So he was like, I was like, if you like the way I move as a running back and I put on 100 pounds, I'm going to be a tombstone. So, yeah, I do remember that. I do remember Brandon being like, I feel like you would be a good running back for us, but Coach Kaz wants you to gain 100 pounds. And I remember I stood in the hallway and I went, where am I going to put it? I was like,
That's a lot of potatoes.
That's a lot of weight. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so always had a passion for football, but played basketball all my life, almost all my life.
That's great.
All right, Brian. If you switched jobs with me for a day and you were broadcasting, what would you call the show, and who would be three guests that you'd want to have on your show?
That's a tough one. Boy, what would I call the show? I'll have to think about that one. I kind of like Wake Up Call. It's hard to get out of my mind now.
Okay.
In terms of three guests, I'd love to have Chuck Pagano on here. Chuck's my favorite coach. I've been blessed the opportunity to learn and talk to Chuck several times. I just think he's just an extraordinary person. I'd have to go with his co-host or the main host, Pat McAfee. I'd love to have Pat McAfee on. I just find him so interesting. He's got a very unique way to present things. I just love that. And then last but not least, I'd probably go with Bill Belichick just because of the challenges to get something out of his mouth. But I find the little words he says very intriguing. So, he would definitely be interesting to talk with.
There's a fresh, I just want him to open his mouth.
Yes.
He has this little, he lets this little tiny, I can't with that. Like if I had to cover him every single day, I would just be like, Bill, I'm gonna lose it. Like you need to give some, like you need to smile in some respect. You have won a lot of games. You've won a lot of Super Bowls. It's been a wonderful time in your career. I need you to just be a little more, just give us something that doesn't, okay, I'm going to say this and you might laugh, but it's how I feel. And I mean this with no disrespect to Bill Belichick at all. I feel like he's, if a human being could embody constipation, that's what I see. It's like this tight, serious, nothing. He just does, it's like a constipated, like held in time moment. And I'm like, why is he like that? Why is he not, going up there smiling, having a good time? So, I mean, calling him.
I think it's a game for him. I think that's part of the challenge. You asked a good question if you actually get him to talk. But I 100% get what you're saying. He definitely is. He looks irritable.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. So what's your second question for me?
Second question, just in terms of your show itself, I mean, how much social media do you have time to actually work on compared to just, setting up the show? I mean, I'm struck by how much social media you actually have out there. It's impressive.
Thank you. I would say that well, doing everything that we do in a day, if I told you what I did, it sounds like when I kind of just do it. Like if I said it out loud, it sounds exhausting, but I have a system where I can almost shut my brain off, in the sense of, I don't want to say shut my brain off. I have a system where like my brain kind of knows, and I love to create. So once I create something, I want to create something else. I don't want to just put something out there. I want to put a special word in there. I want to phrase something a certain way. I want to do a play on words. I want to create a cool acronym. And that's just me. So, I mean, I'm doing stuff all the time. But the funny thing is, the better you get to know me, the more people realize. And people that really, really do know me, they'll say this. They'll say, you're always on social media and you're always active, but you really don't talk about what you're doing in your personal life. You really keep that to you. And so, like, we see all your work, but we're, in the same respects, like, you're keeping this innocence of life, in the sense of, like, if I'm out to lunch with my mom, I'm not posting about it. I'm not writing about, like, I'm leaving my personal life to be mine. So business wise, I use social media to my advantage, but as a human being, I find that the more I work and the more I do and the more I chase my dreams, the more I have absolutely fallen in love with going to my dad's house and watching a movie with him, going to get lunch with my mom, and sitting with my dog at night when I'm done. Like, to the people that are around me in those moments, I'm a very calm, peaceful, like I just kind of want to sit and turn a movie on type of thing. So
Sure.
I would like to hope that I'm balancing those out. But yeah, I mean, I put a lot of stuff up on social media, and there's a lot of purpose to everything that I do. I just very much also value the time to just, because that's the thing, people are, oh, you watching games all night, you watching basketball, you watching this, you watching that.
Right.
No, like I'm going home, and more than anything, before I go to bed, I want to put on stand-up comedy or a movie more than I want to watch a game, because the way that I wind down at night, I love making people laugh. So I wind down at night by either challenging my mind or having somebody make me laugh. That's really what I do.
I love it.
All right, Coach. Well, let's stay with comedy, since I enjoy making people laugh. If you were touring with 3 comedians, and they could be living or deceased, what 3 comedians would you go on a tour bus with, and why?
Well, it's got to be Eddie Murphy, just because I grew up in that era. Eddie was the funniest comedian in the world, and Um, I, I just would love to be around him. I think he's a riot. I saw that there's another what's the Beverly Hills Cop coming out soon. I can't wait for him to play in it. Second would probably be Chris Farley.
Okay.
I don't know. There's something about his energy that's just it's crazy. I actually like to see him off stage and just see what he's like. Part of me thinks he's probably like that all the time, or he was like that all the time, unfortunately. And then last, I'd probably go with geez, I forgot his name. The current comedian does all the Italian jokes.
Sebastian Maniscalco.
Sebastian Maniscalco, yeah. He's obviously I can relate just from Italian heritage and coming from Canastota. I think he's hilarious. I went and saw him at the Landmark a couple years ago, and he's definitely a riot. He's funny.
Yeah, he's coming. He's coming back this year, and I showed my dad the movie about my father.
Yeah,
Have you seen it?
I haven't, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
Okay, you got to watch it because it's very Italian. But and this is not ruined in the movie. There's a moment in the movie in the beginning of it where Sebastian's talking to his dad, who's played by Robert De Niro, and De Niro's in the back, and he's looking through his garden, and he's like, "What do you think that is?" And he goes, "I don't know, Dad. Ants?" And he goes, "Ants." He goes, "That's a possum." He goes, "That's it. They're dead, gone from this earth." And he goes and he gets bologna and he takes it out and puts it on a plate and sprays it with antifreeze and then puts it back in the thing. And my father, the whole like, that's it, they're dead, gone from this earth. My dad is constantly having to get rid of groundhogs, raccoons, all this stuff, skunks in his backyard. And he has like all these traps set and different things that he does. And like he'll smoke them out. So when I saw that scene, I was like, that's you, Dad. Like you're like one step away from antifreeze on bologna. Like that's my dad. So
wait till he starts cooking them. Then you got a real problem.
yeah. My dad sits in the backyard with a cigar and just starts making these things into his meal for the night. But yeah, I mean,
right.
my dad lives on. I mean, he doesn't live in some crazy forest, but we get animals all the time. So but and I told him the things that he can do to be silent killers. Because there's certain animals that keep coming back, and there's ways to dispose of them it's an easy thing to do, and it's kind of diabolical, like the mob, but there's ways to put hits out for groundhogs is all I'm going to say.
That's great. Bill Murray.
Yes. So what's your last question for me?
So I was just thinking about this the other day. I'd love to get your input on it. But if you're the Chicago Bears, do you go with Marvin Harrison Jr. or Caleb Williams?
I would go with Marvin Harrison Jr. And the reason why I would do that is not that I don't think Caleb Williams is a talented quarterback. He is. There's a lot of talented guys. I mean, Michael Penix Jr., granted, there were some mistakes made in the college football national championship, in the playoff. But, I mean, you can't judge a man by a couple minutes of his life in that sense. Michael Penix, to me, he's a talent. J.J. McCarthy's a talent. There's a bunch of guys out there, Ewers from Texas. So I've watched Caleb live. I covered the Cotton Bowl between USC and Tulane down in Arlington, down in Texas. And so, I mean, he is a talent. But
Absolutely.
I'm a little Justin Fields, as much as people go back and forth on him, he stayed a little bit more healthy this season. And so staying healthier this season, on top of the fact that he can run for 100 yards and pass for 100 yards, and Marvin Harrison Jr. just being a talent, and the Bears really haven't had a strong number one wide receiver in a really long time. They've had some backs that work. They need to work out getting another running back. And, just imagine if they make a trade actually, they don't even have to make a trade because Derrick Henry's free. But if they could bring in Derrick Henry, draft Marvin Harrison Jr., have Justin Fields, now that team changes almost overnight.
Sure does.
So I would say Marvin Harrison Jr., not because I don't like the play of Caleb Williams, but because I don't know if I want a number one pick to go to a quarterback and roll that dice when you still have a young Justin Fields in the first few years of his contract. I think that there's enough coming in the not too distant future that if they need to make a move, they can make a move. I also believe that they can make some moves for some guys that are out there. You know, if they want a backup that's serviceable, that could step in as a starter, Kirk Cousins is free as of right now. He's going to be a free agent. Jake Browning is a guy that people can make a play for. There's guys in the NFL right now that have had experience. Gardner Minshew when Anthony Richardson comes back. So I don't think that they need to make that move right now with Justin Fields and the opportunity to bring in other guys at a cheaper rate to be a quarterback on the team behind Justin. But I think that they definitely need Marvin Harrison Jr. more than they need a quarterback right now.
That's fair enough. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either. It's an interesting pick that they'll have, whether they, maybe trade Justin Fields and take Caleb or take Marvin. I mean, I don't think you can miss with either, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I feel like that's been a glaring issue for them, has been their wide receiver core at this point. So, and I don't think you need to move away from Fields just yet. Like I said, you bring in somebody else, you back them up. There's ways to do this in a more fiscally responsible way than to draft a quarterback number one overall. And now you're going to have a quarterback you drafted in the top 5, another quarterback you drafted in the top 5, and you're going to pay them both, or are you going to move Justin? And if you move Justin, what are you going to get for Fields? And is his stock really that high right now? I just feel like if I'm the Bears, I'm going to keep him and I'm going to give him more weapons. And if that doesn't work, then I'm going to move on.
Yeah. I mean, look, part of the NFL is you got to be able to stretch the field. You see it with the Patriots. Just speaking of them, they haven't had a wide receiver weapon in years, probably since Edelman, or even Randy Moss. But if you can't stretch the field, these NFL teams are going to load the box and make you one-dimensional, and it's tough. And I think the one thing with Marvin is he's going to come in and be impactful year one. He's just physically built differently. You look over the history of that league. There's a lot of slender wide receivers that are great college players that don't necessarily do great in the NFL. Devontae Smith, one comes to mind. I think he's a heck of a player. But you take these bigger type receivers, and that's what Marvin is. I think he's going to be a heck of a player. I tend to agree with you.
Yeah, no, I think he, hopefully he has an even better career than his father, which would be astronomical, since Marvin Harrison had such an amazing career that he's one of those guys you never forget. He's one of those guys
exactly.
where you're not a fan of the team, but you know him. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As a Jaguars fan, not a fan of the Colts. However, I got a lot of respect for a bunch of Colts that have come through there. Marvin Harrison, Dwight Freeney, Zaire Franklin, guys that, played at Syracuse, Arthur Jones. So my last question for you, Brian, being an Italian person, what is your favorite part of our culture, and how would you describe us to a newborn baby?
Well, I'd love to say food, but I think it's just the family environments that Italian families typically have. They're these large families, oftentimes dysfunctional, but we get together on all the right holidays, weddings, and funerals, and all these great things. And it's just interesting to me how Italian families never really separate. Even if they hold grudges, they show up, and there's a love there that is hard to describe. In terms of how you describe it, baby, you better be ready to eat a lot. I distinctly remember being 5 years old and having to eat meatballs from my grandmother until basically I threw up, and that's how I knew I was full. So I have a lot of memories of that as a child. So
yeah, I think that my mom, every time I come home from college, she's like, "You're skinny. You're not eating." And
you're right.
And so I would eat less at school, then I'd eat more at home, then I'd eat less at school. And so my stomach kept like shrinking, then it would grow a little, then it would shrink again. So it's crazy. But I also think we have the best stereotypes. People say stereotypes are bad, but I think the Italian stereotype is fantastic, right? If you mess with the family,
That's
then the
right.
next day, people are like, "Where'd Bob go?" And it's like, "Oh, he moved." Where'd he move? I don't know. He said something about Chattanooga, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe Chattanooga, maybe Germany. He moved somewhere. But, Bob just goes away. So,
Right.
I mean, I said, for every stereotype that anybody could ever have, from when I was in elementary school to now, people are like, Danny's family could be in the mob. Like, I don't know if you want to mess with him because you don't know what his family, and that's the stereotype. So I was like, you know
Right.
what? All right. I mean,
Just go with it, right?
there's worse stereotypes than having somebody go, I don't know, that guy's cousins, they look a certain way. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I love being Italian. I love that connection. I love the family, and I feel like people feel that when they come over because I'm Italian and Hispanic, which has a lot of similarities. When you come over an Italian household, I feel like people want to be in the family. Like they see you all, they eat the food, they want to be invited back, they want to be a part of it. They want to be protected by the family.
That's right. You get hugged and kissed a lot, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I tell people all the time, I said, you grow up in an Italian family, you hug your mother, you hug your father, you kiss them both on the cheek. That's
right.
That's what you do. So with that, but I will say this, Brian, you know this and I know this. If you go into any room, anywhere, in any building, and somebody gives you a kiss on one cheek, then the other, then pulls back, looks at you and says, how's your family? You never leave that building by yourself.
That's right. That's right.
So
you got that down.
That coming from Brian Bruno, teaching you about the Italian ways and a little bit about football too. CBA Syracuse defensive coordinator following the 2023 New York State title. Brian, it is my absolute pleasure. I have heard obviously great things about you. I'm so happy we got to do this on the show. If you would oblige me, I would love to have you back on many more times, and I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent today.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, and thanks for covering our amazing school and all of our student athletes. And it was obviously, I really enjoyed myself being on the show, but really appreciate what you do too.
Absolutely. Well, have yourself a good day, and say hi to the family for me. All right.
You got it. God bless.
All right. God bless. Take care.
Bye.
That coming from Brian Bruno one more time here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. And it's something. There's something about being Italian. We love it, right? We love it. You don't mess with the family. My dad, he would say that. He's like, you don't mess with the family. By the way, my dad sang yesterday. My dad doesn't sing, but my dad did something really funny yesterday, and I wish I had it on recording. But he sang. He sang words of advice to me, and I'm never going to forget those words of advice because he sang them. So it's very good. But yeah, you don't mess with the family. By the way, everybody that knows me knows my mom. My mom's like 4'11", 4'10", 4'11". My mother, out of everybody in my family, she's the one that you're like, if you upset mom, nah, you just, sorry, ma. So like, that's, and I think most like grown men that are Italian will tell you that. They're like, you don't mess with mom. You don't mess with mom. And, and I could say this in a lot of ways. We're not all right about everything, but my mom's been right about a lot of things. So, those Italian moms, they pick up on stuff. I don't know what it is. I think moms in general do. I might be a little biased here with an Italian mom, but there's something to be said about the fact that they pick up on a lot of stuff. So you might not think your mom's right, but there's a lot of times where mom is right. And there's also, a bunch of times where my dad's been right too about a lot of things lately. So, kids, if your parents love you and they take an interest in your life and they support you and they really genuinely care about you, listen to them, because you're going to kick yourself in the butt if you don't, because you're going to realize they were probably right. So if you're blessed to have loving parents that want to be a part of your life and support you like my parents do yourself a favor and listen to mom and dad, all right? We'll take a step aside for a fast break. We'll be back after this on Wake Up Call.
Hi, Hi, this is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the whole frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating at 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and always online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond, order anywhere, anytime at maandpaspopcorn.com. Stop in to get a tin at Ma and Pa's on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York to get your half-price refills for the rest of your life. Come to Ma and Pa's for your holiday gift giving for family, friends, employees, and clients. And remember, for fundraising and events, to call 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you?
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. He kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily, and we bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
Avicolli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicolli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicolli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there, and of course you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100, and also find them on myavicollis.com. That's myavicollis.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying, in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to K9 Campground.
PB&J's Lunchbox, the food truck that you love finding all throughout Central and Upstate New York, now has a streetside cafe. So when you're craving their traditional favorites as well as their out-of-box amazing menu items, you can now head to 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. Located just minutes from the highway, the Thruway, Destiny USA, and Onondaga Lake Parkway, PB&J's Lunchbox Streetside Cafe is there for you Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner all throughout the day. Get breakfast for dinner, dinner for lunch, whatever you fancy, including their award-winning grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Find them at 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. PB&J's Lunchbox, where we love to know what's in your lunchbox.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvelange, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant.
GG Cards and Breaks. Like, comment, subscribe.
GG Cards and Breaks coming to you on 639 Delmar Place in Syracuse, New York, right off of Teal Ave, is the sports card shop. It's our sports card shop of choice. Why? Because of the fantastic people that are at GG Cards and Breaks. They love the hobby. They're a part of the hobby. They collect themselves. So to Josh, to Anthony, and to the entire team, Alex, Joel, everyone at GG Cards and Breaks, thank you for being big kids, and thank you for everything that you do to make yourself such a unique sports card and hobby shop. I can't thank them enough for how you feel when you walk through the door, the fact that they remember the teams you like, the players you like. They get excited when you open a pack or a box of cards and you get something that you want, and they just do little things to show you that you matter and that they listen. And in a world that just so greatly needs to build those connections with people and to let people know that you're seen and you're appreciated, GG Cards and Breaks is so much more than a sports card shop, because they do that. They go beyond, and they truly care about the people that walk through the door. You will find so many different things there: singles, packs, graded cards, boxes. You'll find AEW, Disney Lorcana, Pokemon, baseball, basketball, football, as well as hockey, soccer, all sports cards. You can find right on site, on location at GG Cards and Breaks, 639 Delmar Place in Syracuse, New York. Open 7 days a week, Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Sundays from 10 to 5. With that being said, here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, it's time to discuss the College Football Playoff National Championship. Oh boy, what a game it wasn't. But I mean, Michigan just came out of the gate. They struck right away. They, brought it to Washington immediately. Michigan didn't make a lot of mistakes in this game. It was it was a game that definitely sided with the Michigan Wolverines, and I got to give it up to them. I really do. I got to give it up to the Michigan Wolverines. It's funny how this championship was like, if you take an M and you flip it over, it's a W. If you take a W, flip it over, it's an M. So, looking at these two logos, very simple logos, Michigan, but you know who they are. Michigan and Washington. Neither one of these teams had ever won a college football playoff national championship. That has now changed. Washington had never advanced to the college football national championship game. They played in one college football playoff and lost in a large margin to Alabama years ago. So Washington had never been to the championship game. Both of these teams had never won a college football playoff national championship. Now Michigan can join Ohio State as the two teams in the Big Ten to win. Ohio State won the first college football playoff national championship in 2015, and now 8 years late, well, technically 9 years later, go through the seasons here, 2024 from 2015. 9 years later, Michigan has now won the college football playoff national championship. So in almost a decade's time of the CFP, we've seen two Big Ten teams win, that being Michigan this season, and in their first college football playoff national championship ever in the history of college football, after the BCS went away, we saw Ohio State win in 2015. So big time shout out. And it's funny because Ohio State beat Oregon, Michigan beat Washington, but obviously that's the Big Ten defeating the Pac-12 back in 2015 and now. And at the same time, there's more irony to all of this because when Ohio State won their championship, they went through Oregon, and Oregon is in the Pac-12, Ohio State's in the Big Ten. Michigan goes through Washington, who's in the Pac-12, Michigan in the Big Ten. But next season, Oregon and Washington will be in the Big Ten with Michigan and Ohio State, and a game like this could be played in the regular season. Pretty crazy. But that's where we are in college football realignment. Shout out to Michigan. They were the better team. I know that people have heard me on this show, and I don't shy away from it at all. I put up a message yesterday. See, here's the thing. When I take an opinion on something, I back it with factual evidence. Now, Michigan, Ohio State, and the Big Ten in general has an unfair advantage in polling. I can tell you at the beginning of the season that Michigan and or Ohio State's going to make the college football playoff because they're set up to make it. They don't play a lot of ranked teams. They don't really play a lot of teams out of conference that are ranked, let alone at the end of the season that are high up there. So I feel like Michigan, and they play a lot of home games. Michigan will play at home the first month of the season. Ohio State one season had 8 home games, where some teams have 6 or 7. They had 8 at home. They played 5 straight home games to start off the season. So their schedules are set up that way. Their non-conference schedule is not typically against ranked teams. So I don't feel like they're tested as much, and they don't really hold a lot of weight with me when you say that they're one of the top 3 ranked teams in the country, because I don't see the validity of it from the games that they're playing. And during the COVID year, they were both put in the top 25, Ohio State and Michigan, as well as Penn State, put in the top 25 when they weren't even playing any games. Teams were 6 games in, 4, 5, 6 games into the season in 2020, and Michigan rose 4 spots in the polls with a record of 0-0. So that to me was like, if you didn't believe that there was an unfair advantage, why are they in the polls when they haven't played? And why are they going up spots when they haven't played over teams that are playing right now? So that to me was if you don't believe me, how do you not believe me after seeing that? But I said this last night, and I'm clear about it. As much as I think there's been an unfair advantage to the Big Ten, which has helped out Michigan and Ohio State, Michigan was the better team in the 2 matchups that they had. And I said, I've said that the Big Ten and Ohio State and Michigan, this is my exact quote, I have said that the Big Ten and Ohio State and Michigan within that conference have an unfair advantage in the polls throughout the year, which I believe is factual. With that being said, all the credit to Michigan for proving beyond a doubt that they were the best team this season. So they were. And I said it. Somebody had asked me, they said, for all you say about Michigan and about Ohio State, if one of them wins the national championship, will you give them credit? And I said, it's not about what I say about. That's where people get misconstrued. And this is where people don't listen. Because people like to have sensationalism and they like to have fights and they like to see like people get angry and all this stuff. I never said that these weren't good teams, and I never said that these weren't capable teams. All I said was they have an unfair advantage in the polls, which is very clear. And I've spoken to fans of the Big Ten. I've spoken to fans of Notre Dame, and specifically talking about Notre Dame, you know, they've said, hey, we know we get an unfair advantage in the polls. You know, the guy laughed and kind of said, well, you know, you're not wrong. So, you know, there is an unfair advantage in the polls, but this season, Michigan backed it up. Most of the time, Ohio State and Michigan don't back it up. They made it to the college football playoff numerous times over these last few years, and they didn't back it up. But this year, they did. So I'm not going to sit here and say they deserve to be there all of the years before because of this year. I'm going to say right here, right now, in this moment, Michigan defeated Alabama, who I don't think is in their best quarterback situation, but Michigan's defense was tremendous, and I don't want to take anything away from Michigan. Now, were they playing Alabama with the typical line that Alabama has, the typical quarterback that Alabama has? No. But Michigan got better. They were better than Alabama this year, and Michigan's defense really showed up. They showed up against Alabama. They showed up against Washington. You're playing now going up against Jalen Milroe and Michael Penix Jr. to me are two different things. Penix is just leaps and bounds ahead. Not that Milroe can't get there, but Penix, I mean, the way that he can throw a pass on the move like a straight dart, I don't understand how he doesn't throw these passes standing still. Because it looks like he's throwing these passes with perfect precision without moving, yet he's moving. So, you know, playing the teams that they played, going up against the coaches that are so smart like Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer, I want to give him credit from Washington as well. I mean, there's a lot of talent. Now, when you look at these games, and again, I'm not here to take anything away from Michigan. I'm just stating something. Alabama, like I said, their offensive line wasn't as strong. They had a freshman, I think, at left tackle. Jalen Milroe hasn't really proven himself to be the dominant guy. They started the season playing multiple quarterbacks, and then, which is atypical, I think, of Alabama to see so many guys out there. Normally, I would think they know who their guy is. And then in Washington's case, you look at Dillon in the backfield, and everything that he's done for Washington as their lead running back, and he was hurt, so he really couldn't give it a go throughout the whole game. He was used at points in spots, but he wasn't the dominant back that he could be. So both of these teams that they went up against were not a full go, so to speak. But I don't want to take anything away from Michigan any more than I want somebody to take away from me when my Raptors beat the Warriors and they said, well, Klay Thompson was injured, so da-da-da-da-da. The reality of the fact is you play who's in front of you. You play the teams with what they have at the time that they have it. And in all honesty, when we look at these games that Michigan had, I would say more than anything else, I know people, you know, they talk about offense all the time, but defense wins championships, and the defense of the Michigan Wolverines won this college football playoff national championship. Hands down. They won the national championship. I don't want to take away from J.J. McCarthy. I don't want to take away from his running backs, his receivers, his offensive line, his tight ends. I'm not here to do that. What I'm here to say is Michigan's defense did it. Now, the other part of this is when Michigan gets brought up for sign stealing and we look at that, here's my issue. When sign stealing has gone on and your coach has been suspended twice in one season, that mars what you have done. And that, to me, brings about some frustration here. So, to me, I'm bringing this up and talking about it because Michigan won the championship, but in the back of my head, I'm like, are they going to get to keep this championship? Is somebody going to fight the validity of this championship because of what happened during the season? Because that's what you never want to see. You never want to see a championship game be played and then years later, 20 years later, they're like, we're going to take this away from them, because they don't give the championship to Washington. They just say that there's no champion. So there's obviously been things that have gone on with Michigan that make this a little dicey. There's people that are probably upset this morning. And, I saw some stuff on social media, which you take it with a grain of salt because some people on social media are just absolutely out of their minds. And then there are some people that make valid points. So, when you look at this Michigan season, it would have been great if there wasn't a suspended coach, if there wasn't sign stealing, if there wasn't an investigation by the NCAA. That's not what you want attached to your national champion. But if we're strictly talking about the games, then, I give the defense credit because they were incredible. Greg said Michigan could have played Florida State and it would have been exponentially worse. Yeah, here's the thing, Greg. Here's my issue. When Alabama's quarterback went down, the committee didn't punish Alabama. And I don't know if necessarily the committee would have punished Ohio State or Michigan if they had a big-time player go down. If anything, they've given extra treatment to those teams. So I think Florida State's argument is valid in saying it's not our fault that our quarterback got hurt. And the rest of our team, our 52 other players, plus everybody else that's on the roster, shouldn't be punished for that. I think you'd feel a lot different, Greg, or anybody else out there, if you went an entire season, went undefeated, did everything that they told you had to do, and you were punished because one of your brothers or sisters on a team went down. I think you would feel a lot different, Greg, if you were in the Florida State locker room and you were the offensive lineman. And let's say you're the left tackle for Jordan Travis, and your team goes undefeated, and he's gone. And then they tell you because you don't have your player, which is out of his control and out of your control, we're going to punish the entire team. But we're going to make the number one seed a team that has broken NCAA law. That's some juxtaposition right there, right? We're not going to let in Florida State because you have an injured player, but we're going to let in Michigan, who was investigated by the NCAA. So, Florida State deserved to be in. And I appreciate that, Greg. Greg said I'm in the camp that Florida State should have been in. But this is the thing, right? This is the issue. The issue that really comes about is the teams that have improper benefits. Yeah, they would have lost to Michigan. They would have lost. I think Florida State would have lost to anybody. But here's the other side of it. I think Georgia deserved to be in. Georgia was 29-0 from last season to this season before they lost their last game, which was in the SEC Championship to Alabama. I think Georgia should have been in. How do you go from 1 to out after being undefeated? And if we're strictly talking about just this season, they were undefeated in the SEC, except for one game at the end against Alabama. So, to me, I'm so happy that the college football playoff is expanding because I don't think it's really ever been fair. There's only one time where I agreed with the college football playoff's choices, and that's because they finally let one of the American Athletic Conference teams in when UCF had proven for 2 years and Cincinnati had proven for 2 years that they deserved to be in, and they finally let one of Cincinnati's team in when arguably 4 teams, 2 UCF, 2 Cincinnati, maybe a Houston team, should have been in from the American. So, and I'm not saying that because I cover the American. I'm saying it because I watch football. I don't just watch the American. I watch football. I pay attention. And I'll break it down. You could go back and look on my show, and I'll break down like this is who they played, this is what they did. And the criteria that Cincinnati didn't get in on was the same criteria that Ohio State got in on that year, and they play in the same state in different conferences. And they literally asked, why did Cincinnati not make it? And the reasoning that the committee gave was the same reasoning that would have taken Ohio State out. They were like, well, we let Ohio State in because they played this many games and because they won every game in their conference. And then it's like, okay, Cincinnati did that. And they're like, well, they had to win their conference championship. It's like, okay, well, Cincinnati did that. And then they said, well, they had to beat ranked teams. And Ohio State played 2 ranked teams. Cincinnati played 3. So in the criteria of Ohio State getting in, Cincinnati should have been in that year based on that criteria. The criteria that person for the committee wasn't saying was that there's an unfair advantage that is unspoken that the Big Ten is always going to have a leg up. They're going to have a leg up on the Pac-12. They've had a leg up on the Big 12. They've had a leg up on the American. They've had a leg up on the Sun Belt. They just have. Now, the SEC has proven that they should be there, right? When people question the SEC being there, Georgia wins a championship, Alabama wins a championship. But when you question the Big Ten being there, outside of 2015 and 2024, the Big Ten hasn't backed up being there. And in some cases, they've been completely embarrassed in the college football playoff. Notre Dame's been embarrassed both times they've been in. So I just don't like this argument for, which can also be the argument against, and people don't want to see it because they're so focused on they love this team or they want this team or they believe in this team that they don't realize that their argument collapses upon itself because they don't use the same argument for anybody else. So they use criteria to help them, which is the criteria they don't use to help somebody else. Michigan was not the best team in the nation, in my opinion, going throughout the regular season, based on who they played and based on the fact that I don't think that they were challenged like other people. Where they proved to me that they're the best team this season was in the college football playoff. Now, do I think they should have been there last year? Probably not. Do I think Michigan should have been there most of the time they've been there in recent history? They were set up to be there. But this season specifically, speaking of just 2023-24, Michigan's defense is better than I thought it was. J.J. McCarthy, he did what he needed to do. Their receivers and tight ends made big plays. Their running backs were insane. And you got one running back with almost 30 rushing touchdowns this season. You got another guy scores the first 2 touchdowns of the game for Michigan. They score on their opening drive. Michigan has a dominance this year that Alabama did not exhibit. I think that Michigan against Georgia would have given Georgia a really tough time. Michigan beat Alabama. Michigan would have beat Florida State without Jordan Travis because I think most teams would have beaten Florida State without Jordan Travis. I think Syracuse, with their struggles this season, would have beaten Florida State without Jordan Travis. So I don't think the argument for, Michigan would have beaten Jordan Travis-less team. I think most teams would. I think James Madison would have a shot to beat. I mean, look at how good their season was. If they went up against a Florida State without Jordan Travis, I think they got a shot. I think that Florida State was one of the best teams in the nation when they had all their guys healthy. I really do. And you can't prove me wrong on that. They lost one game this season when they had to play their third string quarterback. Okay? I mean, they won the ACC championship game hampered by injury without Jordan Travis. They lost one game this season, and it was to Georgia in a game where Georgia has their players and Florida State didn't. So, and you heard Kirby Smart was obviously not happy with that situation. A bunch of guys in the transfer portal, guys injured, guys that gave up on their team and just left, just booked it, right? So, what are we really saying here is that Florida State should have been in, Georgia should have been in. You can't let Alabama in if you don't let Texas in. So, thank goodness it's going to 12. But now the question becomes, is it going to be the top 6 conference champions now that there is no Pac-12? Or is it going to be the top 5 conference champions or the top 4 conference champions and then a bunch of at-large? Because how it was written was the top 6 highest-ranked conference champions would get in automatically, and then there'd be 6 at-large. So if you look at this season, just to give you a little breakdown of what this would look like if we did it this season. Looking at this season specifically in college football, let me get the ranker here for us. If we're looking at this season of college football specifically in the college football playoff rankings, then Michigan, if we look at the conference champions, Michigan would have gotten in, Texas would have gotten in, Washington would have gotten in, Alabama would have gotten in because they beat Georgia. So they would have gotten in. And then looking at, let's see here. So Florida State would have gotten in. So it would have been Michigan, Washington, Texas, Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama, Florida State would have gotten in. And then they would have had the next highest ranked conference champion, which would have been, well, according to this, it would have been Liberty. So it would have come from Conference USA, which would have bumped out Tulane from the American. So it would have been Liberty that would have gotten into this thing. And then there would be 6 at large. And that's what it would have looked like. Now, oh no, because it's the highest ranked, and Liberty was ranked higher than Tulane, because Tulane was kept out of this ranking here. Okay, so that's what it would have looked like. But now that there's not going to be a pack, as far as we know, right? So we would have looked at a situation where in the top, Greg, the top 4 teams in 12 get buys. So this is how it breaks down. You know what? Let me put it on the screen. I was going to put it on here, but I'm going to put it on the screen. So let's break it down here. We're going to do a little screen exercise here. So this is what it would have looked like. I'm going to bring up my whiteboard, so to speak, here. So let's bring it up here. Okay. So this is what the college football playoff would have looked like if there's 12. So the top 4, which would have been Michigan, right? 2, Washington, 3, Texas, and 4, Alabama, they would have had buys. So they would have been on bye week, right? And then this is how it works. So now you have 8 teams left, right? So you have 1, so you have these teams, right? So here are your teams that you have left. So you have 8 teams that are going to play in the quarterfinals. So I'll put a Q here for the quarterfinals. Then in the semis, you're going to have these teams face off against Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama. So this is your semifinal. So I'll put semi here. And then, or I'm sorry, you have your first round. Pardon me here. You have your first round. I got ahead of myself. So your first round is here. Then this is your quarter, where the top 4 seeds play. Then the advancement from here will go to your semifinal. So if anybody knocks off the top 4 seeds, or if the top 4 seeds go on, whoever wins these matchups is going to go ahead and move on to the semis, and then you would have your championship game here. So you have 4 rounds essentially, with your top 4 teams are going to be off, and then teams 5 through 12 are going to face off against each other. So this season specifically, if we're looking at who would have been out there, this is what it would have looked like. So what did Greg say? There will always be discussion. Next year, it would be who was the number 13 and 14 teams that got left out. So, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a discussion about it. Always. There's always going to be a conversation about who deserves to get in, who doesn't deserve to get in. So if we look at the expanded playoff for this year, and we just got to look at it. So this is what it would have looked like. I want to bring it up right here so I can take a look at it. So it would have been, let's see here. No, that's not what it was. So how it'll work is as follows. So this is who would be in it as of right now. If we took the 12 this year, it would be 1 through 12 would be Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama, Florida State, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Missouri, Penn State, Ole Miss, Oklahoma would be your top 12. The first round would have been, actually, this is not done right. Your top 12 in the rankings is Oklahoma, but they have to take the top champions here. So Liberty would have gotten into this one, like I was saying before. So I just read off your top 12 in the college football playoff rankings. This is what it would have looked like. It would have been number 12 Liberty against number 5 Florida State, number 11 Ole Miss against number 6 Georgia, number 10 Penn State against number 7 Ohio State, number 9 Missouri against number 8 Oregon. So that's what it would be. The top 4 seeds would have bye weeks. The winner of each team listed above would move on to face teams number 1 through 4. Teams will not be reseeded. This means the top-ranked team would proceed to face the winner of the number 9 versus the number 8 matchup. So that's what that would look like. So there's not a reseeding of this. So the top-ranked team would face the number 9 versus the number 8, which means that the winner of Missouri, Oregon would face off against Michigan, and we would go from there. So that's how we would look at it. If it stays the way that they wrote it into being, obviously, I don't know if they had a contingency plan for not having the Pac-12. I don't know if that's something that was put into it. It's a discussion that I was talking to some people, and it's a discussion that I think is on the table of what are they going to do from here? How are they going to assess the fact that there is no more Pac-12? So I think it's on the table to discuss, are we going to keep the top 6 highest ranked conference champions and then 6 at large? Are we going to take the top 5 conference champions and then 7 at large? Because the way that it was kind of set up was to include the champion of the Pac-12, the Big 12, the Big 10, the SEC, and the ACC, and then to take one more being of the 5 conferences that are left. So they would take the champion of the MAC, or whoever was the highest ranked in the college football playoff rankings, whoever was the highest ranked team that won a championship. So that could be from the MAC, from the Sun Belt, from Conference USA, from the American Athletic Conference, or from the Mountain West. So whoever was the highest out of that, then they would go. Then it would be, okay, who are the next 6 teams that we have? So that's how they break down how I got to where I got to on that. So that's what it looks like right now and what it would be. So if it happened today, the college football playoff of 12 would have been really interesting. And it would have had, I'm trying to bring up a graphic here that will let me take a deeper look at this if it had occurred today. So if we had this, then yeah, because I'm looking at this right now, but we would have okay, so they have the 8-9 matchup right there. Okay, so the 8-9 would play the 1, the 4 seed would play the 5-12 matchup, the 2 seed would play the 7-10 matchup, and the 3 seed would play the 6-11 matchup, is how it would work out. So that's how we would break this thing down, and that's what this would look like. So, it's just trying to look at a bracket, if it were to go on today, what this bracket would essentially look like here for us and how everything would kind of sort itself out. So we are going to 12. The question is, are we going to stick at 6 automatic bids for 6 conference champions that are ranked the highest, or are they going to make that 5 without the Pac-12? So that'll be an interesting thing to see, because there's a big difference between an automatic bid versus having 7 at large and only 5, because then that would be the Power 5. And then once again, the quote-unquote Power 5, which I can't stand that moniker, but you'd have to put a 5th conference in there. So who do you consider the other conference if there is no Pac-12? Who do you put with the Big 12, Big 10, the Big 12, Big 10, ACC, and SEC? Do you put the American? Do you put the Sun Belt? Do you put the MAC? Do you put the Mountain West? Or do you put Conference USA? That's the question. Because the highest ranked conference champion this year came from Conference USA. But that might not be the case next year. So are you going to have a floater as a conference champion? So that's where we're at right now, because, obviously the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC don't have to worry, I would imagine. The ACC on a little bit of notice here, but I don't think that those conferences have to worry that their conference champion is going to get in the new model. But now the question becomes, what do the rest of the conferences do? Do they have 2 spots? does it stay 6? Because if it stays 6, then that means that of the MAC, the Conference USA, the Mountain West, the Sun Belt, and the American, 2 of those conference champions are going to get in with the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Big 10, which is huge. So the Pac-12 dissolving would be great for those conferences that are grouped together and not adequately respected. So that would be a better situation. So Greg said the committee would not put Florida State in the 5th spot in this hypothetical bracket. No, the conference champions go into the top 6 spots. So though that's where these conference champions would go. So based on the polling of the final, I shouldn't say the polling, it's based on the ranking of the final of the college football playoff going into it, Florida State, Michigan would be the 1 seed. And it's, remember, right now it's the top 6 highest ranked, right? So Michigan goes in, Washington goes in, Texas goes in, Alabama goes in, and then Florida State is the next in command to be in this, and then they have at large. But how they want to seed them, what they want to do with them, that's up to them. But based on how you look at the college football playoff rankings and what they've done, the college football playoff is going to put these teams where they want to put them, but they're automatically going to put the top 6 in. And how they want to rank these 6 is going to be up to them, but the top 4 are going to be locked. Well, that's how it would work. The top 4 are locked in. Top 4 conference champion. So whoever's a conference champion is going to be up there. So let's say Georgia and Alabama are both in the top 4 in the college football playoff rankings. Only one of them can win the SEC. So one of them is going to be in the top 4 buys, and then another one's going to jump in there with them. And then they have to determine who's going to play. So yeah, Florida State would be a 5 or a 6 seed because Florida State is a conference champion, but they would more than likely, because of their situation without Jordan Travis, they're not going to get a bye. So they're going to play because your conference champions are supposed to be regarded in a higher light. Now, if they wanted to lower them down the rankings like they would a Liberty and say Liberty won the conference championship in Conference USA, but we're going to make them a 12 seed, that's up to them. But I would imagine the top 4 seeds in the future of the college football playoff, and I'm sorry for any confusion because I'm working this out as they're working it out, because from what I'm being told, the college football playoff, like everything as they move forward with the Pac-12 dissolving, that there's still room for conversation as to how they're going to work this out. So don't think that everything is set in stone completely right now, because things have changed since they made this. But in the college football playoff expansion, the top 4 teams, in fairness, those top 4 teams should be from different conferences. That might not be the case. They should be, but it might not be the case. Now, because let's say they want to put Georgia and Alabama, right? So then they have Georgia and Alabama be off, but then you have to punish another conference. So let's say Michigan wins the Big 10. Let's say the Big 12 is won by Oklahoma State, right? And then you have Clemson winning the ACC, and then your last one is going to be, let's say, Alabama wins the SEC. So now you have to figure out, Georgia with 1 loss, do you put them above Oklahoma State? Do you put them above Clemson? So there's still going to be a switch up in the rankers. I think what's fair is to have your top 4 buys be from different conferences. I think conferences are going to fight you forever if you don't do that. But ultimately, the way that the committee decides to rank these teams could screw people over that have won their conferences. See, I'm a proponent of, if you're going to have 12 spots and 4 of them are going to go to your conference champions, then those 4 should be from different conferences. And I think that's easy if all four of them go undefeated, right? If the Big Ten champion, the Big 12 champion, the SEC champion, the ACC champion go undefeated, then that's your top four. Not in that order, but that's your top four, right? And so now you don't have to have a conversation about it. But if one of those teams has one loss, then what are you going to do? Let's say Michigan wins the Big 10, but they have one loss. So they're 12-1. What do you do? Right? Because now they're 12-1, but they won their conference. And let's say Alabama's 12-1, and they lost their conference, and Georgia won it. So who do you put in? See, there's constantly going to be arguments over this stuff. The good thing about the expansion to 12 is Georgia and Florida State would have still gotten in this season. Florida State wouldn't have been punished for losing their quarterback, and Georgia wouldn't have been punished for all the success they had in losing literally the last game of the season. So, that to me, I mean, you look at the final rankings in the AP, and Georgia's ranked higher than Alabama, and they didn't play in the college football playoff. So, you look at those final AP rankings, and that to me, that says something to me. That they're already, I mean, they're up there. We look at the final AP, and you got Michigan, Washington, Texas, Georgia, then Alabama, then Florida State. Despite losing to Georgia as much as they have them tied with Oregon. Then they have Missouri, Ole Miss, Ohio State, Arizona, LSU, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma rounds out the top 15. So, it's always going to be a conversation. We're always going to go back and forth. We're always going to try to figure this thing out because that's reality. But the best thing that could happen in college football right now is to expand. Because if you don't expand, then these teams are, I mean, if you don't expand at this point, conferences are going to want to just break away. They're going to want to do something else. Because what's the point for the Sun Belt, the MAC, the Mountain West, the American, and Conference USA? What is their point if they're never going to get a chance? This is supposed to give them a chance. It's not supposed to send 5 teams from the Big Ten or 5 from the SEC. It's supposed to have a little bit more fairness. But if we look at this season alone and what could have come of this season, I would have loved to see 12 and not 4. I would have loved to see it because I think it would have been more fair. And that's reality. That's reality, but it didn't happen this year. Michigan was the better team in the matchups that they played in. Their defense proved to me, to hopefully you, their defense proved that they commanded the game against Alabama from the beginning of the game. They commanded the game against Washington pretty much from the beginning of the game. Michigan was the dominant team in both. So, and I think Michigan would have beat Texas. Honestly, I don't think anybody was going to beat Michigan. Looking at how they played in this, I don't think anybody was going to beat them. And that's why I openly can sit here and say, give them credit for getting in. I never said Michigan wasn't a good team. I never said Michigan didn't have talented players. I actually said the opposite. All I said was the Big Ten gets an advantage in polling in the college football playoff, and the committee gives them an unfair advantage. That's all I said. And in past years, they didn't live up to that unfair advantage. This year, they did. This year, they proved it. Did they look as battle-tested as Oregon and Washington and Alabama and Georgia, arguably, and Florida State with what they played out of conference? No. But at the end of the season, Michigan was the better team. They were the better team. And I give them all the credit in the world for that. Congratulations to Michigan. I really hope that all this stuff off the field doesn't come back and take this championship away, because then it ruins everything. So I hope that that's, that this NCAA investigation, that I just hope that there's clean hands with the NCAA, there's clean hands with Michigan, because the last thing I want to see is something to go down, we see a championship, and then it's like, oh, okay, but it is, but it's not. I don't want to see another championship that is, but it's not. I was at a championship game where it was, but it wasn't. And I don't want to see that again. That's no fun for anybody involved. So I give credit to the Michigan Wolverines. I give credit to their team. I love the fact that J.J. McCarthy has somebody that helps him with his mental health that's on staff there at Michigan. I thought that was really cool. I love that he takes, his shoes off and puts his, socks on the field and centers himself and does some yoga before the game. I think that's incredible. I think talking to your mental health coach during the game was a really cool thing to kind of hone you in. I thought that was amazing. So, I think the things that struck me the most about Michigan is the mental health side of it, seeing what J.J. McCarthy does, and then really seeing their running backs take off. Most rushing yards in a championship game in the college football playoff or BCS ever, passing Texas, I think, who had the most, and Ohio State, who had maybe the third most now. So over 300 yards rushing. In the first half, it was like 200 something to like a measly small amount for Washington. And obviously Dillon being injured doesn't help. But I think the things that surprised me positively the most with Michigan were definitely the mental health side of things, because I think that that's extremely important. The defense of Michigan and their rushing attack. I think those are the things that really in front of me right now. I'm like, respect, Listen, you're the better team, you win. I've gotten a lot of predictions right. I've gotten some predictions wrong too. I didn't pick Michigan. There's a lot of people that didn't pick Michigan, and credit to Michigan for winning. I stand on the factual evidence that the Big Ten has an unfair advantage, but I also respect the heck out of the fact that Michigan balled out in the college football playoff, and they deserve the accolades because they did what they needed to do. They beat everybody in front of them. They finished 15-0. And from here on out, they got a tough non-conference schedule, and their conference gets tougher. Now you got to play Texas in non-conference. Now you got to play Washington. I think they're playing Alabama. So to me, it's like in conference, out of conference, they're going to get tested. And with that kind of test, if they were undefeated then, you wouldn't hear me saying anything. I'd be like, yeah, put them in the college football playoff. They won the Big Ten championship and they beat those teams out of conference and in conference, put them in. I've never had a problem with Michigan. I've never had a problem with Ohio State. I've never had a problem with the Big Ten. I have a problem of unfair advantages and double standards. And I've had that problem in elementary school all the way to right now. I don't care who it is. I don't care what the topic is. I don't like when people have unfair advantages. So I call it out because double standards are not fair. I never said Michigan, Ohio State, or the Big Ten don't have talent. I said we should all start on an even playing field and see where we go. And I think there's other teams out there in recent history that have been more battle tested. And I think that when you're 0-0, you shouldn't be in the rankings 6 weeks into a season during COVID where you weren't going to play and then rise up 4 spots when you're not playing. How do you think UCF felt when Michigan at 0-0 went above them in the rankings? It's moments like that where you can argue with me that that's not an unfair advantage, but I will refute you in a very easy way in those instances. But that has nothing to do with the Big Ten. It has to do with the unfair advantage to the Big Ten. And I would say the same thing about the ACC. I would say the same thing about the SEC. I would say the same thing about the American. And like I said, I talk to fans and I tell them, like, you got an unfair advantage with this. And they'll laugh and they'll nod and they'll go, you're not wrong. So, I mean, that's reality. Michigan backed it up this year. Sometimes the SEC gets an unfair advantage, and they've backed it up. Sometimes they haven't. But in the college football playoff, most of the time the SEC backs it up. Michigan backed it up this year, and I give them all the credit. It's not a baby step for me, Greg. My respect is earned. And Michigan and Ohio State have been taken care of by the committee. This year they took care of things themselves. And I will always give Michigan credit for what they did this season. As long as this investigation by the NCAA doesn't turn around that they cheated, then I don't think I need to give them credit, nor anybody else does. But Michigan this year did what they needed to do. That doesn't change my feeling on the unfair advantage that's been created for them. And if it was given to Syracuse, I'd say the same thing. I'd come on the show and say Syracuse is ranked in the top 10, and they played teams that are ranked in the top 60 to 150. Or 60 to 100. I don't know why they're ranked in the top. I mean, look at Penn State. Penn State was ranked 10th in the country, and they played all unranked teams and number 23 ranked Iowa. And I didn't think that was right. You know, you look at some SEC teams that have 3 losses that are ranked above undefeated teams. Notre Dame this year had 3 losses, and they would not take them out of the top 15. They could not take them out of the top 15, 16 teams in the country. When anybody else with 3 losses would have been out. They would have been out of the top 25. I shouldn't say anybody else. The SEC would have still been in. The Big Ten would have still been in. But we know that you would have to be an ignorant, naive person who didn't want to see the truth to not believe that certain conferences are given preferential treatment. In this year specifically, Michigan backed up the preferential treatment. They didn't back it up last year. They didn't back it up the year before that. They didn't back it up the year before that. But this year they did. So this year specifically, which I think rankings should only be about this season and not all the other seasons, which is another problem with the rankings. In 2023-24, Michigan was the better team. That doesn't make them the better team in 2020. It doesn't make them the better team in 2018. It doesn't make them the better team in 2021. And it doesn't refute any of my arguments of preferential treatment in the rankings by the AP, the Coaches Poll, and the College Football Playoff Committee. All it says is that this specific year, they were better. Their running game was awesome. Their defense was really good. J.J. McCarthy handled his business. And the team navigated multiple suspensions for their quarterback or for their head coach, and they didn't miss a beat. If I could say anything about Michigan, they handled adversity like champions, and then they won like champions. And as long as the NCAA investigation does not turn up any more information to prove that Michigan did this in any type of dirty way, then they won a championship. That's what I don't like about all of this, is that I can be proud of Michigan, and I can say I was wrong on my prediction because I'm one of the few people in the media that can admit when I'm wrong. But I don't like that there's all this background suspension, sign stealing stuff with Michigan. And I'm not trying to belabor the point. I just don't like that that's there. It's murky, right? And it was murky with New England. When New England, it's they're going to have the first undefeated season ever since the Miami Dolphins, but because they play more games, they're going to have the best record ever in the history. And I was sitting here going that's not fair to the Miami Dolphins, because as far as we know, the Miami Dolphins didn't cheat. But we knew the Patriots cheated. We knew the Patriots, they were brought up for, according to the NFL, they were filming other teams. They were cheating to win. They had to forfeit a game, or they should have had to forfeit a game. You look at that, they should have had to forfeit the season. So I just don't like this background with Michigan, because it makes it murky, just like it made the Patriots murky. And that's the part that I don't like. And if I'm a Michigan fan, I would be excited, but also a little leery of are we going to get to keep this championship down the road? So that side of it, I don't like. But the side of it that I was wrong and I picked Washington and Michigan ended up winning, okay, I was wrong. Congratulations to Michigan. I think if humanity could admit when they're wrong and congratulate and give respect where respect is earned, this world would be a lot better of a place. But most people just stay stuck in the mud and refuse to say when they're wrong, and they refuse to give respect, and they refuse to, shake hands with somebody and say, hey, you were the better team. Congratulations. But for anybody to insinuate that I have a problem with the Big Ten, Ohio State, or Michigan, or Penn State, you're not listening. Because I've said for years, I have a problem with double standards. I don't have a problem with those schools or that conference. I have a problem with how they're treated. But if they were in the SEC, I'd say the same thing about the SEC. And there's been moments with I brought up with you, how many times did I tell you Alabama could lose 2 games? Alabama is the only team in the country that could have 2 losses and they'd still argue them in the college football playoff. How many times have I said that? Because they have an unfair advantage. Notre Dame people were arguing that Notre Dame should leapfrog Cincinnati a few years ago and get into the college football playoff when Cincinnati beat them head-to-head on the road in South Bend. It shouldn't have to matter where they played. They could have played in Timbuktu. But normally, a head-to-head victory would refute any conversation. But when you're Notre Dame, it's no. Cincinnati beat them, but Notre Dame's better historically. And people were literally arguing, and they said Cincinnati owed Baylor respect because of what Baylor did to help Cincinnati get in. Cincinnati was undefeated. Cincinnati beat Notre Dame in non-conference play on the road by double digits. And people were still saying Baylor. They were saying Notre Dame. How do you say that a team should get in the college football playoff over another team when that team that you think they should leapfrog is the team that beat them in head-to-head play? How many times do we get to see with over 130 teams in college football when we're trying to decide who makes it where? How many times can we actually say these teams played each other and we know the champion? That's the easiest tiebreaker, head-to-head. That's how the NFL decides seeding. How did they play each other head-to-head? It's common sense. If Kansas City and Miami both finished the season 11-6 and Kansas City beat Miami head-to-head, Kansas City's above Miami. It's friggin' common sense. But they were trying to argue Notre Dame over Cincinnati when Cincinnati beat them head-to-head? So to argue with me that there's not double standards is to lose. But if you want to tell me I was wrong because I didn't pick Michigan, you're right. I was wrong that I didn't pick Michigan. And how many times were you wrong when you picked something that didn't end up happening? I'm okay being wrong because I can admit it. And I can give respect where respect is due because Michigan, they bullied Alabama and they bullied Washington. They were the big brother in both of those games. So credit to Michigan. But when I told you Toronto Raptors would win a championship, and y'all told me I was crazy, I'm still waiting for thousands of apologies. I can admit when I'm wrong. When are you guys going to do it? We'll take a step aside for a fast break. We'll be back after this. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville Bees. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you. Looking for your next ride? Look no further than Great Lakes Honda City, located on 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Serving our community for decades, their new and pre-owned vast array of vehicles are available to you Monday through Saturday on site. To search from home, shop at GreatLakesHondaCity.com. Call 315-365-5576 to set up an appointment. That's 315-365-5576 for Great Lakes Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Great cars, great people, Great Lakes.
corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success in Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also, I think we recognized that, we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career. It's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. Appreciate you being here every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The ingredients to success coming up here right now, and it always rounds out our show on Tuesdays. Typically, I say at 10:50 a.m. Eastern Time, but we always go long on the show. So we end our Tuesday show with the ingredients to success, proudly presented by the fantastic team at Avicolli's. You can get to Avicolli's by going to 7839 Oswego Road in Liverpool, New York. It is right at the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road, so that Oswego Road, also known as Route 57. Route 57 and Oswego Road, right at the corner. You will find them there for decades, and they are right down the street from Liverpool High School, and we have our Liverpool Warriors monthly broadcast on site, on location at Avicolli's in celebration of the Warriors, their student athletes, their coaches, and administration. So make sure you pay attention to our social media so you can find out when we're going to be there next, including this month of January. Very excited to have our shows out there and get to have some fun with the awesome student athletes, coaches, and administration that are at Liverpool High School. So a big time shout out to them in our community, and a big thanks to all of them as well. So with that being said, it's time for us to get into the ingredients to success, proudly presented by that fantastic team at Avicolli's every single Tuesday to round out Wake Up Call. And our ingredients to success, the topic today has to do with the college football playoff. What are the ingredients to success? Well, number one, you got to shut out the outside noise, right? Michigan had to do that better than most because of all those things going on, people calling them cheaters, their coach being suspended, the questions of, what's going to happen with Jim Harbaugh. They had to shut out the conversation of Jim Harbaugh leaving after this season. This is his swan song. He's not going to coach the team anymore. So you got to shut out all the conversation that's going on with the suspension. You got to shut out all the conversation that's going on of if your coach is coming back. You have to shut out all the people that are calling you cheaters. So they've had to be really good at quieting the noise that is around them. And I think that that's something that we can all learn from, right? Do we quiet the noise? How do we quiet the noise? How do we center ourselves? Because you can't literally quiet the noise, right? Sometimes you can't literally, you can't turn down the world like you can turn down a radio. You can't. So how do you quiet the noise? Whether you're fighting for a national championship or you're chasing any other dream that you have, or people saying things about you, people saying things about your family, when you can't turn it off, when you can't shut it off, when the world isn't as easy as a dial on a radio or that little thing on the side of your phone, you can't silence it, you can't turn it down. What do you do? And I think that, going back to Michigan and them having a mental health coach essentially there, that to me is crucial, right? To go and seek people that can help you to center yourself. You know, people that can be there for you. People that can talk you through things. I think that's really, really, really vital, is to surround yourself with helpful people. People that are going to tell you when you're wrong. They're not going to be yes people. They're going to tell you when you're wrong. They're going to tell you when you can improve. They're going to tell you how you could be a better person. They're going to challenge you. They're going to push you when they need to. But they're going to do it in a loving way, in a caring way. They're not going to disrespect you, right? But they want to see you do well. So they're going to push you toward that. And I respect the heck out of that. I respect the heck out of people who surround themselves with people that ask them to really look at themselves and to be honest with themselves. And you have to ask yourself, how often do you do that? How often are you blatantly honest with yourself? Do you surround yourself with people that are blatantly honest with you in a loving and caring way? Don't surround yourself with people that just are horrible towards you and say really mean things to you. I'm not saying that. I'm saying surround yourself with good people. People that are going to challenge you and ask you to be the best version of yourself. So I commend Michigan for having a mental health person. I commend J.J. McCarthy for doing yoga, knowing he's going to be recorded, knowing people are going to take pictures, knowing people are going to laugh at him, knowing people are going to question him, knowing people are going to think he's weird, knowing that the media is going to make a story about him having his socks on the field and he's sitting there cross-legged and, you know. I mean, people made a spectacle of Tim Tebow praying to God. When you kneel down now, people are like, are you Tebowing? They made it a verb. When all Tim Tebow was doing is what I do and what so many of us do, is we get down on our knees and we thank God. There's nothing on this planet, off this planet, anywhere in the beginning or ending of time that I will get down on my knees for. Except for God. And Tim Tebow's the same way. But they made a spectacle of it. So, what are the ingredients to success when it comes to the college football playoff or it comes to anything in life? You got to shut out the outside noise. You can't turn it off, but you have to drown it out. You have to train your ears to hear the good and let the rest go. You have to train your ears, and that doesn't mean to not take constructive criticism. It means you have to train your ears to leave the hate out. You have to train your ears to essentially hear it, but for you to not ingest it, right? People are going to scream things at you, but people tell you all the time they could drown it out. I can drown it out. When I go out to a restaurant, let's say I'm on a date. So I'm sitting across from a nice lady, and we're on a date, and I'm talking to her. I've been on dates before where the girl will look at me and she'll go, did you just hear what that guy said over at that table? And I'm like, no. She's like, you didn't hear what he said? And I'm like, no. She's like, but you're sitting closer than I am. I have this thing, I don't know how I did it, but it's just something that I've done probably my whole life. I can drown out the noise around me and focus on the voice I want to focus on. And when I'm on a date, I'm listening to her intently with purpose. And so I can hear them. It's kind of like a running refrigerator is what everybody else sounds like. It's just kind of noise, but I'm not hearing their words. I know that they're there, but I'm drowning them out. If I want to listen to what the table next to me is saying, I have to conscientiously change the channel. I have to take my focus off of her voice, put my focus on their voices, and I can hear them. But it's an art, and I don't know if I just do it by the grace of God, probably. But I can be in a room full of voices, and I can hear and focus on one voice. And then if I want to shift to another one, I have to conscientiously do that. So, like if a bunch of people are booing in the dome, I can focus on like Isaac's voice next to me, and I can hear that, but I can like turn my focus from it and get away from it. And it's harder when it's louder, of course, and when it's in unison, but we have to be able to do that. I don't think that there's a lot of athletes that would tell you that they don't want to drown out the booze, when they're on the road, or when they're shooting a free throw, or, in the case of this game, if Michigan's marching down the field, that J.J. McCarthy is going to tell you that he wants to hear all the Washington fans. Now, some people do. Some people love that. Some people love hearing the hate. It just makes them laugh and it makes them play better. But you have to train yourself, however you respond to the negative energy, negative emotion, negative actions, negative words and thoughts of people, you have to train yourself to either hear it and be totally fine with it, or drown it out and just keep it out. Some people can hear it and not let it in. Some people have to not hear it to the best of their ability. But when I look at the college football playoff, for example, and I liken it to life, because that Wake Up Call is where sports meets life. When I see all of this, and it's something that either I've experienced, or in the case of the college football playoff, I've never experienced being a player on the field, right, in one of those games. But I think in life in general, mental health is very important, and mental toughness. It is incredibly important to be able to control yourself. So mental health is important, because people will always try to knock you down. They knocked down Jesus. So why would they knock down you? Why wouldn't they knock down you? They knock down perfection, they're going to come after you too. So your mental health, how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself, the words you use with yourself, if you beat up on yourself, if you're constructive toward yourself or destructive toward yourself, all that mental health, incredibly important. Mental toughness, the ability to hear things you don't want to hear, know things that are very hurtful, know that people don't like you, know that people don't respect you, know that people want you to fail, know that people don't regard you as somebody that's on their level. You're not in their league. They don't think you're a broadcaster. They don't think you're a quarterback. They don't think you're a teacher. They don't think you're a head coach. They don't think you're a pilot. They don't think you're deserving. You have to be able to be tough against that. And then you have to be able to control your emotions. Right? Players get yelled at all the time. But very few players go out into the stands and punch a fan. And because it's so seldom, we remember when it happens. So you have to be able to control your emotions. So I can look at the college football playoff, our topic for this, ingredients to success, and I can look at life the same way. You have to be mentally tough. You have to practice good mental health. You have to control your emotions. And you have to understand that the more frustrated you get with what the other team is doing, the other person is doing, the other force is doing, your frustration is not going to change it. Your worry is not going to change it. Your stress and anxiety over it is not going to change it. If J.J. McCarthy stood under center and said, wow, every time I try to pass the left side, they keep knocking down the pass. They keep knocking down the pass. That makes me frustrated. That makes me angry. That makes me upset. That makes me anxious. That makes me stressed. He's not going to play well. But if he looks at it and says, okay, I'm not going to keep forcing the pass there because I want to show them I can beat them. I'm going to force it. No. Okay? If they're not allowing it here, then I'm going to throw it to the middle. If they're not allowing me to do this, I'm going to go over here. If my left tackle is struggling, I'm going to run behind my right tackle. He was focusing on the solution, not the problem. See, some people will tell you, if you want to complete a pass to the left sideline, you need to keep throwing that ball until it happens because you need to prove to that person that you're better than them and you need to prove that you're right. People that try to prove that they're better than other people and prove that they're right, they're always miserable. Because once they prove that person wrong, they have to prove somebody else wrong. But someone who can take the ego out of it and say, I don't have to complete a pass to the left side, I just have to complete a pass. Or maybe I don't have to complete a pass, I just have to run. Or maybe I don't have to run, maybe I just have to pitch. See, if J.J. McCarthy stood under center with an ego and Washington was stopping something, then J.J. McCarthy would have made a lot of mistakes because he would have been overcome by emotion that he wasn't controlling. He wouldn't be mentally strong. His mental health would have suffered. His wellness would have suffered. His anxiety would have gotten the best of him. His ego would have gotten the best of him. And he would have eventually thrown an interception to the place where he was struggling. Instead of saying, because, yeah, that person might say to you at the end of the game, and I'm just making an example, I'm making something up here, but let's say one of the corners for Washington at the end of the game went up to him and said, yeah, you won a championship, but you didn't complete a pass against me. If that goes under his skin and it gets into his heart and it eats at him, if he lets that happen, then JJ lost even though he won the national championship. JJ shouldn't be concerned with, I couldn't throw to that side of the field without having an issue with that DB. JJ should be concerned with, if I can't throw there, then I got to throw here. Let me liken it to life. You ask a girl out or a guy out. Most attractive person you've ever seen in your life. They don't want to date you. So let me make an example out of myself, right? I'm in high school. I got a crush on somebody. I want to ask her to prom. She's going with somebody else. If I think about her, just like J.J. McCarthy throwing to the same place over and over and over again, if I think about her, if I wish and I hope and I pray that the guy that's bringing her cheats on her or breaks up with her or doesn't want to go with her, so I'm spending all my energy hoping something bad happens, which is something that I don't do, by the way, but let's, for argument's sake, I'm wishing something bad on the guy. I'm wishing that he decides to not take her. I'm wishing that she doesn't want to go with him. I'm wishing that that opens up. I'm wishing that she wants to go with me. And so here's all these other girls that want to go with me. And time is just tick, 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 tick. It's like J.J. McCarthy choosing to throw somewhere else. You can't make this girl go with you. You can't make her boyfriend break up with her. You can't make her break up with her boyfriend. You can't make, and even if you did somehow do that, you can't make her go with you because she broke up with her boyfriend. So now I'm consistently throwing to the left side, hoping to God that something's going to happen. Instead of going to the middle, going to my running back, going to the right side, or carrying the, you know what I mean? Giving myself another option to go to the prom. Because the reality is, for example, what guy would not want to date Jennifer Aniston? Right? There's a lot of guys that would go out with Jennifer Aniston based on the fact that she's a beautiful woman and little to no other information. You don't even know who she is. The girl I had a crush on in high school, to this day, I couldn't tell you 5 things about her. But I had a kid crush. I was only at the surface. But here's the thing. A lot of guys want to date Jennifer Aniston. 99.9% of the guys that want to date her won't even meet her, let alone date her. 99.9% of the guys that have a poster of her somewhere in their house, they're never even going to meet Jennifer Aniston. So if they focus and say, that's the only girl for me, this most beautiful girl in the world, that's the girl, gotta have her. That person is not going to meet the person that they're supposed to be with, that's meant for them, and they're not going to give it a shot. They're not looking at other options. J.J. McCarthy can't throw to one part of the field that's not working and not look at other options and expect to move down the field. You can't expect to move forward in life when you're hung up on an option that's not going to happen. It's not an option. It's not viable. So just like you wouldn't ask your quarterback to keep doing the same thing over and over again that's not working because it's the definition of insanity, why would you ask yourself to keep doing the same thing over and over again, keep asking the same girl out that told you no a million times, hoping that she's just going to say yes? Right? There's some doors you have to bang down. There's some times where, you don't get the job on the first try. There's some times where you got to keep throwing to that receiver because eventually it's going to work out. We saw that with Washington last night. But there's other times where you have to understand that you have to look other places. You have to take your ego out of it, control your emotions, be mentally tough, and practice good mental health and surround yourself with constructively good people in order to move forward. J.J. McCarthy didn't win a championship. Michigan won. Michigan won because of their coaching staff, because of their mental health staff, because of the offense, defense, and special teams. Right? Because what was the play that secured the victory to end the game? An interception. That didn't come from J.J. McCarthy. That didn't come from his running backs. That didn't come from his receiver. That didn't come from his head coach. That came from that man who picked that play. So you need a lot of things to win a championship in life. You need a lot of things to move down the field in life. And you cannot be closed-minded into thinking I can do it with some of these things, but not these other things. You have to be open to surrounding yourself with people that will love you always, and they will constructively help you grow. You can't surround yourself with yes people and expect to grow. You cannot expect to move forward in life if you're not mentally tough, if you're not mentally healthy, if you don't know how to shut the noise off in your brain, in your heart, when the noise, because the noise is never going to stop. You just have to train yourself to not hear it, or to hear it and not care. See, we want the noise to stop. So many of us want to control the uncontrollable. We want to make people stop hating us instead of training ourselves to be okay with the hate, which is within our control. There's a lot of people that didn't like Michigan or want Michigan to win a championship. A lot of people that didn't like any of those guys on the team. Not because they know them, but because they're Washington fans. Not because they know them, but because they're Ohio State fans. Not because they know them, but because they're Alabama fans. Not because they know them, but they just don't like Michigan. Maybe they dated a girl from Michigan. And now they hate Michigan, not because of anything that Michigan did, but because whenever that guy sees that yellow M, he thinks of his ex-girlfriend. So he hates Michigan forever because of one person. It's not logical, it's not rational, but you can't change his mind. You can't. So the way to win a championship, the way to move down a field in life, the way to make it to the end zone that you're trying to make it to in any walk of life, you have to have these ingredients: mental health, mental toughness, control of your emotions, absence of ego, the ability to ad-lib, surrounding yourself with non-yes men, with people that will constructively criticize you with love, turning down the noise or accepting that it's there, either training yourself to not hear it or training yourself to hear it and not care. And in most cases, both. That's how you win a championship in life, on and off the field. Those are your ingredients to success. Proudly presented by the fantastic team at Avicolli's on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road on 7839 Oswego Road in Liverpool, New York, right down the street from Liverpool High School. And that is a wonderful place for us to do our broadcast, right down the road from Liverpool High School. You can literally walk from the high school to Avicolli's. We do our Liverpool Warriors shows at Avicolli's every single month on 7839 Oswego Road in Liverpool. You can go there for lunch, dinner, and drinks. Obviously, if you're going to drink, please be of age and drink responsibly. And they are open Tuesday through Sunday for you, closed on Mondays on 7839 Oswego Road in Liverpool, New York. And you can call them for takeout, delivery, and catering at 315-622-5100. You can also go to the Partners tab on wakeupcalldt.com and click on Avicolli's to order online today. Or you could go to myavicollis.com. That's myavicollis.com and order online for lunch and dinner today. With that being said, I appreciate you tuning in. on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, and on wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. Once the shows go live, they jump into the archives. We already have our shows up with the Baldwinsville Bees from last night on all of these channels that you're seeing. You can find Wake Up Call on Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Podbean, Podchaser.com, Podvine, Spotify, TuneIn, and YouTube. All you have to do is search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT, to find us there. And a big time thanks to our incredible partners that we have in the community: Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, GG Cards and Breaks, PB&J's Lunchbox, Avicolli's, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Mother's Cupboard, Great Lakes Honda City, Pizza Man, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, and of course we are the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Lemoyne College Dolphins. It's Fins Up every single month on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Tune in for Dolphin Time, which comes to you every single Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. First and third Wednesday of each month, with AD and DT, featuring Athletics Director Bob Beretta, the AD, and myself, Dan Tortora, the DT. On the other side, you'll find the Dolphin Dive the second and fourth Wednesday of each month, diving into stories of student athletes, coaches, administration, future Dolphins, and alumni. Find all of our content with the Dolphins, including the episodes of AD and DT and the Dolphin Dive, by going to our YouTube channel and clicking subscribe on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, and you hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and of course you could find the Lemoyne playlist on our YouTube channel. You can also find the Dolphins under the exclusive partners tab on wakeupcalldt.com. For more information, go to lemoynedolphins.com, and as always, Fins Up. The Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse are exclusive multimedia marketing partners with Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. You can find the Bobcats every single month here with us. They are currently in basketball season. The men's team, going into their second half of the season, are ranked number 1 in the nation, hailing from Syracuse, New York. The women's basketball team ranked number 2 in the nation, hailing from Syracuse, New York, both on James Street. You could see them play their home games at Allen Hall on the campus of Onondaga Community College. So go to Allen Hall at OCC to watch them play their home games, and of course go and see them on the road. Bobcats men's and women's basketball vying for another opportunity to be in the national tournament. Men's and women's soccer teams at Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse have each won national championships. And the baseball team had their inaugural season last year, so you can watch this program grow in it. How many times do you get to see an inaugural season for a team and be a part of their beginning years? You get to do that, make history with the baseball team, which I love and I think is so awesome. And of course, we have esports at Bryan and Stratton as well. For conversations with administration, student athletes, and coaches, you'll only find them on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Bobcat Buzz. Go to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt and click subscribe, hit the notification bell, and see our BSC Syracuse playlist. You could also find them on wakeupcalldt.com underneath the exclusive partners tab. And for more information, go to syracuse.bscbobcats.com. As always, go Bobcats. With that being said, here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, I want to thank my incredible guest, Brian Bruno, who joined me for the first hour and change of this show. Brian Bruno, an alum of CBA and Boston College, and the CBA Syracuse defensive coordinator for the Brothers football team. Big time shout out to him, and a congratulations on the 2023 New York State title, as well as all of the work that he has done over the years to build up student athletes and to truly be a teacher and a father figure to each and every single one of them. Thank you, Brian, for the work that you do. Big time shout out for Michigan for winning their first ever college football playoff national championship. Big time shout out for both Michigan and Washington for having the opportunity to win their first ever college football playoff national championship. Washington going to their first ever CFP championship game. And a big time shout out to Avicolli's for the ingredients to success. Many thanks to all of you, including everybody that came out to our Baldwinsville Bees girls basketball special on site at Pizza Man. last night. You can go back and watch the videos on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt. We'll be adding the videos to our wakeupcalldt.com partners tab under Pizza Man, so you'll be able to see it on the Pizza Man page on wakeupcalldt.com this week. And of course, you can listen to the audio version on any one of our channels that I shared with you here by searching Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. With all of that being said, find us on Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, X at Call DT, Instagram at Wake Up Call _ DT. And as always, God bless, no stress, do your best. Chase your dreams, pray to God, believe that it can happen, and know that every good thing in life that you dream about and you go after, if you trust in God, you give your all, and you listen to Him, you will find everything and more. God bless you all. Have a fantastic day. Stay faithful and stay well.